Welcome, everybody. Hello, welcome to Inspired by Mystery podcast. Hello, everybody in chat. I would like to say hello, especially to Mr. Shuki, who came in from Bitter Pants. It is a pleasure to have you. My name is Sammy Soros. I am the host of this fantastic Inspired by Mystery podcast. And I have a very super special guest tonight. This is Francessca J. Rose, who is one of my most favorite people in the entire fucking universe. So I would love to welcome my very dear friend and partner in inspiration, Francesca. Welcome.
Hey everyone, pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, Sammy.
I am so happy to have you on the show right now. This is
Thank
so
you.
awesome. I think we are about to, who even knows? Who even knows where this is going to go? But when me and you get to talking, we can talk for an unlimited amount of time, and the rabbit hole goes really deep whenever we get chatting. So I'm really excited to see where this conversation leads us today. It's going to be fan-fucking-tastic.
I'm ready to
So
flow
I
with
kind
it.
of, I know, yep, we're always flowing. You know, sometimes with people I have very like, okay, let's talk about these topics. And with you, there's not even any need, because whenever we get to chatting, it just goes in so many different fantastic directions that I didn't even want to limit any of our topics today. So,
Awesome, awesome. I'm excited. Just a moment to remember all those times in Ocean Beach when it's like 5 in the morning and you and I are still talking and I have to work at 8 a.m. Okay, that's what we're talking about. So we'll
I
see it.
yes,
So when you usually go to bed is actually when I get up these days.
I
But
know.
we'll see what happens. We'll see what
I know we
happens.
did a little switcheroo as far as that goes. But just to give you guys a little bit of insight into how we met and how some of these extremely long conversations have began between us, I met you. I think it was, I'm going to say 2006, I believe. I think it was 2006. And
Hmm.
we met. This is kind of a cute story. We met at a convenience store in Ocean Beach, San Diego, California, where we were both living at the time. And I had dreadlocks that were about, I don't know, maybe like halfway down my back at the time. And Franny here also had dreadlocks. And it was kind of funny because I was about to go on a vacation to Costa Rica, and I was looking for the cheapest carton of cigarettes to take with me on this trip. So I go into this one convenience store and I ask them how much their carton is, and they give me the price, and I'm like, I'm going to price match. So I walked across the street, went to another place. Theirs was more expensive, so I went back to the Supermax. And I am so glad that I did, because if I hadn't been doing that price matching, we would have missed each other. So
Oh yeah,
she
it's
is,
funny too because my perspective. I'm in line and I'm staring at Sammy, and I had a question on dreads, and I had a situation, and I'm staring at the back of her, and I'm like, I bet that girl knows. I should ask her. And then that part of me is like, no, don't do it. Be cool. Don't talk. And I'm having this inner conflict. And the next thing I know, and I had made up my mind, like, okay, I'm going to be cool. I'm not going to say anything. The next thing I know, I am reaching out, and it was like I didn't have control. And I'm tapping Sammy on the shoulder. And then she turns around, and I'm like, okay, do you know anyone who could help me with my dreads? And that was at 2 hours later. We're still talking,
yeah,
still
we like paid
bonding,
for
and
our
super
shit
nice.
and moved into like an aisle. I think we're in like the paper towel aisle or
Out of the
whatever.
way, yeah.
Yep.
You know,
And we just sat there, well, stood there, I guess, in the aisle and seriously talked for about 2 fucking hours, the very first time that we ever interacted. And it was so amazing to feel like we just clicked the first moment that we started talking. You started talking about dreads, and I was like, oh, hold on, let me pay for my shit real quick. And then you paid for your shit. And we just continued this conversation. And one of the funny things is we started talking about music.
oh yeah.
And I am pretty into heavy music. I'm into a lot of grunge music. Like, that's my shit. And I don't meet a lot of girls specifically that are also into, Tool and Alice in Chains and Primus and shit. And it was funny, I said something to you about, like, yeah, I have dreadlocks, and a lot of people just automatically think I'm a fucking hippie. but I'm not. Like, I don't like fucking jam bands. Like, my idea of a jam band is fucking Primus. And you're like,
Yes.
holy shit,
Yes.
me too. I am the same way. People think I'm a little hippie because of my dreads, and it's the same thing. I'm a rock and roller to the core. And that's what really like bonded us together at first. And I actually wore my Primus shirt today
Nice.
in honor of our meeting.
I love it. I love
So yeah,
it.
so that began our friendship.
Shout out to Illy and the Spells.
Oh
That's
yeah,
Chelsea's band.
that is our friend Chelsea's band. That's fucking
Yeah.
awesome. I'm glad that you wore that.
Also
Gotta
my
represent.
band. Yes, yes.
But yeah, that was a really special thing that we realized that within those 2 hours that we had so much in common. And actually, it was funny because I remember you telling me that people had tapped you on the shoulder before thinking you were me. You're like, people thought that you know, I was the one that works at the pizza shop and I didn't even know who that was. And it was you all along, which was kind of funny.
Yeah, it is funny. It's funny though how connections can be made and you can just have so much, so much momentum behind it. It's like supernatural, like I said, I had made up my mind and I'm not, as much as I try to get in a flow state and I dedicate myself to that, I'm not necessarily an easily led kind of girl, but I tell you, something literally took over my body, a part of me, a deeper part of me, or who knows, maybe it was supernatural intervention. The angels and the guides were like, you two, get together.
I'm so glad that you did, because we could have just crossed paths a million more times. But something told you that this connection was a worthy connection to be made. Right. And I am so glad. And you know what, that being said too, a lot of times people meet each other and they're like, wow, we should totally hang out sometime. And then you never, ever do. And in this circumstance, I told her, I was like, I'm actually going to Costa Rica tomorrow for like 10 days or whatever it was. But I'm like, when I get back from Costa Rica, we should absolutely hang out with each other. So we exchanged numbers, and it was before Facebook and all that. I think we probably had MySpaces at the time or whatever. And I was like, whenever I get back, like, I'm going to hit you up. Also, I work at the pizza shop, so you can come find me at the pizza shop. And I don't remember who called who initially. But
I called you.
Did you?
Yeah, because you don't answer your voicemail. You were in Costa.
I'm terrible with voicemail. I'm still terrible.
I know.
With voicemail.
I remember that. You told me that.
But it was great. We did. We absolutely made it work. And then when we actually got to hang out, not standing in a store, we realized how many wonderful things that we had in common. And not only just like interests in common, but our extremely deep introspective nature. That it is rare to find people in this world that we can sit and ponder the meaning of life and the afterlife and the universe. And, a lot of people that I meet, maybe they're interested, but they just aren't able to actually go really deep into that stuff. And that's okay. But us meeting each other, we knew instantaneously, like, oh man, okay, we have a lot to talk about. And there was so many different aspects of, the supernatural, paranormal, or whatever that we just initially started connecting on. And here we are, how many years later? 15 years later. 15 years later. And here we are. Wow, it's pretty amazing. We have been there for each other throughout time. You actually officiated me and Dusty's wedding, which was the highest honor, I must say. You don't just willy-nilly give somebody the honor of officiating your wedding. But I will say, those that do not know Franny in person, she is a Virgo to the maximum degree.
No. I'm half fired. Yeah. But don't forget, I'm half fired.
But your Virgo is very prominent. And for those that might not understand.
A little Virgo goes a long way.
It does.
A little Virgo goes a long way.
But the fact that you are very focused on what it is that you do, whatever your task is at hand, you get very focused and you make sure that you look into every meticulous detail and it's done right. And that is one of the things that prompted me to have you be our officiant at the weddings because I knew that
Oh yeah.
you were going to be able to come up with something really fantastic to present to everybody and that you would have edited it and re-edited it until you felt 100% happy with it, and you did, and I think you did a fantastic job, and there's nobody that I would have rather had do that for us. It's very special.
I appreciate that. Here's a confession though. I only did like one draft and I wrote it like the day before or the
Shut
morning
up,
of.
really?
Yes. I mean, I have the intentions of a Virgo, but just stuff comes up and I get the fireside and I honestly like I have to wing it. The older I get and the more time goes on and I have less of it, the more I just got to like be spontaneous. So you have to balance that need for that perfection and the preparation and it helps you hold the space or whatever it is, you know, it grounds you. But we don't always get that luxury. But I did put a lot of thought into that and I would have like dragged myself. I could have been my leg could have got broken. I could have been in a car accident and I would have like discharged myself to be there. I wouldn't have skipped it. You
Thank you.
you can count on me for those things. Like I won't call off sick. I'll be there. But
I
I just
knew it.
wanted
I
to
knew it. You know what?
just
Even
a one
regardless of
drop
whether you did it
wonder.
the night before, I knew I could count on you, and it was
Mhm.
fantastic. It was absolutely fantastic, and I know that I can count on you for anything ever, and I know that you know that for me as well. So it makes a very special friendship for us, and we've both grown so much in so many unique ways in the past 15 years. We've been able to watch each other grow up and get into different careers and find ourselves, and one of us cut our dreads off. Spoiler alert, it wasn't me. You did have some fantastic locks.
I
I
still
will say.
got them. They're in the closet. I should have like, stuck them under a hat. Oh, that's what I would. Next time I'm on the podcast, I will bring the dreads back and they will be sewn to a beanie so they stay
Okay,
together.
I think you should
Yeah.
do it. That would be fantastic. You can be me next Halloween. There you go. Just dye them colors.
Ooh, I like that.
Actually,
I'll
a
do it.
friends of ours, Jesse and Benasia, actually were me and Dusty for Halloween a few years ago,
Awesome.
and she ordered a rainbow dread wig from the internet and put beads in it and everything, and totally nailed it. Like totally fucking nailed it. It was the
That's
highest honor that
awesome.
our friends dressed as up for Halloween. It was great. It was really
That's
good.
awesome.
It is so cool. But yeah, so we've come a long way since then, and 15 years later, we're here. Oops. Hold on. I just fucked something up and I don't know where you went to. Hold on. Hold on. So
I think
sorry.
I'm
There you go.
here.
Sorry, I just hit a button. Okay. We're back. My bad. All this technology stuff. It's a work in progress. Let's put it that way.
Happens to the best of us.
It does. But something that is really, really cool that we are a part of together that happened maybe like, I would say 3 or 4 years ago is you
Mhm.
started a group called Domination University. And this is a fantastic thing that I would give anybody, like, I would say anybody that's interested should check out this website. There's YouTube, there is Instagram, there's Facebook pages. And what Domination University is Franny started this group, and it is a group of empowered women who share different things of their interest. And it's fantastic. She chose a few close friends to be contributors. So the whole setup is kind of like it's a university, but it is more so a podcast, video podcast, audio podcast that has a bunch of different topics at hand. And each holder of office has different things that are inspiring to them that they like to bring to the table. So there has been an awful lot of podcasts by yourself, some from myself as well, and some from the other contributors about various different topics. And it's absolutely fantastic. Dusty went ahead and put a link in the chat. So if you're interested, I would say please check that out. But I would love for
Can
you
I
to tell
add
me
to
a
that
little bit
though?
about. Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah.
say I'd love for you to tell me what inspired you to begin it and tell a little more about it.
Yeah, I want to talk about the evolution. You nailed a lot of the beginning parts. It was definitely about sisterhood. The university archetype is all about learning, education, growth, and that's something that's always been inspiring to me. Self care, self work, and just having some type of spiritual path that you harness for yourself. And so this is right after Me Too. And it was just apparent, so apparent that women need to come together and be able to rejoice in our sisterhood and be able to help each other, because you see, I mean, it's just the division and the female competition energy that has been really manufactured by society for so many years, so many decades, post witch stuff. I mean, there's just been a long history you know, of it working better for certain people when women don't get along. So we decided to do the opposite of that and to be able to share our strengths. And so each person that joined the podcast created their own office. Like, this is what I'm going to focus on. Chelsea, who we mentioned earlier, sex magic, conscious sexuality. Sammy, office of personal power. And she's got some fantastic episodes. You have some fantastic episodes on there. And then mine was eclectic integration, which definitely has a lot of holistic stuff, philosophy, meditation, and like some natural health stuff, and then some, um but the future is definitely, the future's been female, but the grander future is non-binary. And so we've been looking to, bring on more male guests, and or just, bring on topics that are more universal. And we definitely, encourage people of all walks in life to be able to see what we have to offer. Because everyone has a little bit of masculine, a little bit of feminine, and yin and yang, and ones and zeros, and whatever it is, we choose to integrate it, as it feels right to us. And we identify how we identify. So we really want to be as inclusive as we can. Everyone's welcome. There's definitely female focused stuff, but that has been more so going in the direction of that which can be just fully inclusive to all people. And it's really like a mothership. I like to think of Domination University as like just this nice little portal, that anyone can access. We do have some Easter eggs on there. So do look out for the sex zone, which is Chelsea's amazing photography. Chelsea is a real life dominatrix, and she's a shaman. So she's a shamanatrix. But it's funny, people see
Shamanatrix. I love that.
Shamatrix. But what's funny to me is that people see I'm the dean of Domination University, right? I started it and I do a lot of admin stuff. So I guess that makes me dean. But people think that I'm like a full blown dominatrix just because of association, which is, it's just always funny to me when they find out I'm actually not a dominatrix. But we have one, she's over here. So you can go right to her stuff. Um, but there's just amazing photography on there, and there's some, articles on meditation, there's blogs. We have some videos. We have punk rock space talk. I think that's still on the front page. Yeah, Sammy's video of that. And so we're just
That
going
was
to
so
continue
fun.
growing.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Oh my God. That's so there's a video of Sammy. It's about 25 minutes long. And it's in her kitchen. And I was in town and we got together, and this is something, obviously when you're Sammyosaurus, you don't have to actually prepare for stuff. So it just puts the camera there, and Sammy pulls out her cigarette and just starts talking about space. And you're just so easy to follow, and you know your stuff, but you put it in layman's terms. And it's a really fun video about our solar system. So check that out on the
Thanks. Was it only
website.
25 minutes? I felt like it was substantially longer than that. I thought it was a long one. I feel like I rambled forever.
No, I think it's about 25.
Interesting.
If my Virgo memory serves me right.
I love that though. I love that you hit me up and you're like, I know you know a lot about space. Like, do you want to share your knowledge of space? And I thought it was really important to be able to figure out how to say these things in ways that, you know, the average person can understand. Because when you're trying to learn about space and astronomy, like there's a lot of really big terms and math that I still do not even know, but being able to explain it in a way in which people can be like, oh, okay, I didn't really understand that before, but it was explained simply. So I really
Right.
loved the fact that you had me do that. And I just talked about the universe, and it was so much
Yeah.
fun. So thank you for having me on to do that. It was great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you've had a
So,
lot of really interesting different discussions via the Domination University platform. What was some of your personal favorite subject matters or interviews that you did on there that you felt like were the best or your favorite?
oh man, that's a good question. I've done a lot. I've probably done close to 40 interviews. This is, I think, the first time I'm being interviewed, actually, which is funny. Um, I had my spiritual teacher on there. Her name's Catherine Schiff. This is one of the most downloaded episodes, and she is world-renowned psychic. She's involved in a couple different energy schools where she teaches energy work and just it's really cool meditation type stuff. It increases your independence. It's stuff that you can just do with your own mind and just you can create your own tools along the way. But she offers a lot of really great guidance, and she really works with some very high vibe energy that I thought was just came out really well.
Cool.
Um, I mean, there's so much. I interviewed an acupuncturist, yogi. I mean, there's talks on sales and business, and then there's talks on Bach flower essences and meditations. And uh, we actually just did one. So moving forward, next week we're putting out a podcast called the. I haven't decided. It's either going to be the full moon soup or the super moon, spelled
I love
SOUPER.
it. I love it.
Super moon. I'm going
Yes,
to put
that's the one.
super moon in the chat for no reason, just for some humor. But
I
so
love it. I love it.
Chelsea and Maya, who's been a guest, and she's done fantastic podcasts. They came over and we all started making soup out of pressure cookers. And Chelsea was showing us how to do it because we hadn't really done it before. And so we decided to do a podcast in the middle, and that's how we're going to launch the new season. Not our best work from a technical standpoint, which is why it still hasn't been released because the mics were picking up each other. So that I have to go in there and I have to edit it like
Aww.
this. And I got halfway done and I thought my elbow was going to break. Um,
Oh no.
and so, but it's going to come through. So we're going to launch that next week. We're going to try to put out a podcast at least once a month. And have the newsletter back out when there's more stuff, and then we want to keep building up the resource that is Domination University, and big stuff with climate change, climate action coming out beginning of the year. I want to try to dedicate it to solution based as well as individual based action that you can do, and just be able to provide people with the information that they can need to make conscious decisions. So that's coming out, and there's some lot of good stuff in the works. So sign up for the
That's so
newsletter.
great. I'm so glad that it is continuously generating really good content for everybody, and it's nice to know that you are keeping that momentum going. I know that there was a little bit of a lull because you had a baby recently.
I
You had a
did.
quarantine baby.
Yeah, I had a pandemic baby for sure. My Lionsgate baby, he's 15 months now. And so that's, yeah, we're still navigating the new normal of that, you know, creative passions and professional pursuits and being a mom. It's interesting. It's really rewarding. Our baby is just magical, and he just gives us so much joy. He's so great for our family too. Like, we are soul tribe. You can tell. And I don't know what our past life experience might be, but he is totally one of us, and he loves art and music, and he dances, and he just loves wonder. He's a deep thinker, and he watches people, and he's just so fun to hang out with. And so I
That's
love it.
so
And
great. I'm so glad that you
well,
made a
much
little mini me with your partner, Nick, and
yeah,
you feel like he's
yeah.
part of the tribe. When you sent me the first photo of him right after he was born, now, let's be honest, a lot of times infants, just born new babies, they kind
Two
of
months
look like,
early. 2 months
yes,
early.
he was 2 months early. He
2 months
was
early.
absolutely tiny. But just in
NICU
general, a
baby.
lot of babies, they're just kind of look like little goblins or whatever. And they look like their eyes, they don't even know what they're looking at. But when you sent me the photo of Roman, I remember telling you right away, it was like, I can see in his eyes that he was ready to come here for whatever reason. Like, he is aware, he knows
Yeah.
what is going on. And I could see it right from the beginning. So that's really special because I know that you have always like dreamed of being a mother and hoped to have a little conscious being to, you know, teach the ways of the world and try to put another good human being into this world, because your goal is to make the world a better place and you do it in so many different ways, all of the time. Like, you're always trying to make the world a better place, and now you are training a little human how to be a good person and how to put really good things into this world. So,
Thank
I'm really,
you. Nick just handed me this.
yay!
You can't, it's like distorted,
Yes, there he
but
is.
there he
That's the
is.
one. I'm
It's
like, he knows what's going on. He's looking right into my soul. Little Roman. Good night, Walt. Thanks for coming in, my friend.
so there's actually a story there too, as always. Um, so it's interesting when you want to have a baby, and we tried to plan everything, and we got married, and then we're like, all right, let's get after it, But you can notice baby beans around you if you're looking for that, or if you are intuitive and you can notice different energy. And I think I don't know if this is something women feel more than men. Men probably feel it to some extent when you are looking to connect and open that portal. And so I knew there was baby beings around me even before we were ready to get started. And I had a session with Catherine, my teacher, and we went through and we started working on soul agreements, and we started, and she helped me, kind of clarify and ground, some of the stuff that I wanted to have as part of my relationship as a mother, and and make sure I wasn't carrying baggage from other relationships, that I didn't need for this one. And so we, did cleansing stuff, and tried to deprogram stuff. But I actually, had some intentions. Like, I want to bring a child into this world that actually cares. I don't just want someone who comes to this world who wants to just consume whatever and have a, grandiose time. I want, to bring someone into this world that actually cares and will, be passionate and be willing to, look outside of their own interests and try to, be a good version of themselves and help make the world a better place. And there wasn't like all this pressure, like, all right, kid, you gotta save the world. There wasn't anything like that. But I was very clear. I want someone who actually cares, And then he lit up. He lit up. So even before we conceived, there was that connection, you know,
Wow.
that relationship. We did a lot of stuff, along the way, different meditations. I was doing some stuff with her, some graduate classes, and just working on different stuff. And it's amazing how much unexamined stuff you might have, just different stuff that sat with you in childhood, and maybe it gets covered up with other stuff, and it may not fit there that well. Maybe it's not vibrationally compatible with who you want to be or who you are today. And so it was really nice to be able to dedicate that time and have a very intentionful, conscious experience of this.
I am so glad that you had that positive experience and you felt like you connected with him before he was even real at that point. Like that's such
Yeah.
a unique and special experience that you got to have. I love that. And that's everything that you deserve to have for
Thank
sure.
you.
That's really
Thank you.
cool. So it's funny because I remember before you gave birth, you came up with this whole plan about how you were going to have this specific music on and there was going to be like whatever, I don't remember exactly what it was, but you wanted to have like certain scents going and this whole thing. You were like, this is going to be such a beautiful experience and I'm so ready to just have it all be perfect, and then surprise, 2 months
Hmm.
early you're going into labor. So tell me a little bit
Oh
from your
man.
perspective what that was like having
Do you
to,
really want to know?
well, maybe not the like
It's
details
tough.
of the physical situation, but emotionally what it felt like for you to have this whole plan in place and have to switch gears and like what that felt like to you in that moment.
Hmm. This is such a loaded
Only
question.
share what you feel
So
comfortable sharing too.
I'm comfortable sharing everything. It's just, it's a vortex. And
Dusty says, I remember there being
so,
a lot of pelvic exercises in the chat.
oh my God, this is hilarious. So I did, okay, let's just get a little context. I did prenatal Pilates the entire time, like 2, 3 times a week. And I was doing it by Zoom once COVID shut down. And because I just felt like I needed it. And I was trying to be like super prepared. And I also like, you're balancing, oh, I want it natural. Like my mom had all her kids natural, midwife, no drugs. And then my husband's not comfortable with that. He wants more of the traditional, the Western protections in place. So that was, you're kind of juggling that. I had this situation, this still moving through this, I guess. I was doing physical therapy at the very end of my pregnancy because I've had back issues. And that was also, the prenatal was, Pilates was supposed to help me with that. But I started having this kind of like pelvic pain, which pregnant women will often have, stuff's moving around. And it was creating the shooting pain, but I had no intention of slowing down. I wanted to work up until I had the baby. And so I decided to do physical therapy. And I'm like, okay, like just help strengthen my body. And we need this pelvis to come together. And they often throw on the massage. So you couldn't get a massage anywhere, right? And I really appreciate it, even though I'm on my side, I'm getting massaged. And the massage therapist, I don't know what happened there. I mean, the resolution is I think my son wanted to come early. It's something he vibed with her, but the massage therapist I think was way too aggressive. And she was kind of rolling me out. And you can't, once you're that pregnant, you can't be on your back. You couldn't, so you can't lay on your back anymore. There's a health concern there. But I'm on my side and she's literally like rolling. And this is a Asian style massage. So, got good chi movement, but she was just, and it was so difficult because I was in a very submissive position, but I don't feel safe. I'm thinking that it's probably she's probably too rough, but I'm having this shooting pain in my pelvis and I'm like, do I need to move through this? So that was the day before. And it was really kind of devastating in a way for a moment. Cause I'm like, oh, I don't know. I hope that's okay. And so anyway, by the very next morning, my water had, or the my belly had dropped. So for people who haven't been pregnant, it probably doesn't make any sense. But you could literally tell from like my belly button, like I'm sticking out, and let's say it's to here, it's not here. It dropped 2 inches. So I'm like super upset, and I'm all over Google, and I'm texting people, and everyone's like telling me, no, it's fine, right? So that night my water breaks, and I'm like, is this really happening? And I actually just kind of went back in bed and I just kind of laid there, like, not saying anything. And then fortunately, Nick is very intuitive and he's like, are you okay? And I'm like, no. So by the time we got to the hospitals, when I was actually starting to go into labor, and at that point, it was just shock and denial. Like, you don't want to believe it's true. I'm also extremely angry. I'm more angry at myself than the massage therapist. So I'm trying to move through all these pictures, and they're pumping my body with every single drug that you can imagine, all trying to stop labor, right?
Oh,
Everything. There's also steroids and things that they're putting inside me because they want it to go into the baby. And this was just such a bad headspace because I'm having those inner battles, and I'm trying to move through all those pictures, and I'm trying to like use the force, like, don't have this baby now. And I find out I'm going to be at the hospital till the baby's gone. Like, I just didn't want to believe it. I had my entire August was like packed to the max with like appointments and different things I was trying to handle professionally. And I just don't want to believe it. And then, within a couple of hours, it's funny how fast this all happens, right? Because this is like 3 a.m. ish to 4 a.m. Next thing you know, it's morning, and they're like, well, we can't stop it. So you're going to have to push this baby out. And it was tough. I mean, it was not my birth plan in any way, shape, or form. And fortunately, I guess the silver lining is that um, birthing a 4-pound baby, I'm guessing from my experience, is probably a lot easier than birthing an 8-pounder. So I'm glad I
that's
had a
a
little
fact.
guy at the
Yeah.
birth canal. That was like the silver lining there, and it was amazing. But it was honestly really difficult because I held him for like not even 10 seconds, and then he started turning blue, and then they took him away from me, and then they took him to the NICU, and I told Nick, I'm like, just go with the baby, like focus on him, don't worry about me. And I didn't get to see him again till like almost 8 hours later.
Oh my God.
And I couldn't even hold him then because he's in the incubator. So I didn't even see him again till like the next morning, and I
Oh,
ended up
that's
having
so
the
sad.
epidural. So part of it's just like I couldn't walk yet, and that was tough. But there's just a number of different things. It was hard. It was extremely invalidating. And then you add hormones. Those postpartum hormones are legit. Like, everything feels like you're underwater, and everything's just so much more emotional, and the tears just come so easily.
What
Um,
about the connection that you felt like you had before he was actually present with you? Did you still feel when he was born that connection was very prominent? Like
yeah,
that
I was
spiritual
actually talking
connection?
to him at the end, at towards the end. I think I had another like 40. I think I had 45 minutes of actual pushing. So it was very, very fast. But when I got to that point and they're like, okay, we're ready for you to push this baby out, I tried to talk to him, because I was such a nerd, but I was thinking about his rising sign. I was like, how unnatural is this, right? Like, what does this child have? Does he have any control? And I think he had a lot more. I think he had a lot more um, intention to come when he did. Uh, and I said, I'm like, sync up with me because they're going to make me push you out. And I want you to come at the time that you want. So be aware. A rising sign changes every 15 minutes. And sure enough, he was born at 111 with a Scorpio rising, and just a very, very impressive Zodiac chart. So I thought that was a little bit validating when I saw it. Like, okay, I like how you line that up. You have a nice little trio there in the front.
Yeah.
And anyway, I'm getting nerdy now.
No, I think it's really interesting that crossed your mind in that moment about how, when his normal due date was, you expected him to be born with these certain attributes. Since you
Right.
are like big into astrology, you were like prepared to have these attributes in a human. And now all of a sudden, everything is different. It's
Yeah.
totally different circumstances. So I find that very interesting that was what you were thinking about in that moment. You're like, oh shit, what are we doing? I wasn't even prepared for this. So,
Yeah.
so that being said, with your interest in astrology, where did that begin for you? Was it something you were always interested in, or was it something that inspired you specifically to dig deeper into astrology?
I'm trying to pinpoint it. It definitely came to me in a time in my life when I was searching for information. And that's definitely probably a more interesting time in my life when um, the world at one point changed. And I had an experience and I had a conversation with someone, and we were talking about energy, and suddenly the spiritual world revealed itself to me in at least somewhat of a capacity, and I was looking at things different. I wanted to know the truth, and I went on quite the quest looking for knowledge and wisdom and self learning and stuff like that. And so I found astrology along the way. And being a Virgo, one of the more annoying signs in the zodiac, I found it very helpful for me to just be mindful of some things that just happen to come very easily to me.
Interesting. So, when you started learning about it, was it just like a self taught learning situation? Did you get books and read on it yourself, or did you have somebody close to you that was well versed in this that could teach you the ways of it?
I got a book. It's called The Only Zodiac Book You'll Ever Need. It's a pretty popular book, and it came with a little CD disc, and it had software so you could do your chart. And I think it breaks it down pretty well. And I think that's the main learning that I've had. I know you can get a lot more technical. I Once you start getting into the nodes and stuff, and that's why I start to get lost in that. But I got up until the houses. I think Cafe Astrology also is a website that I really like. They've had like tons of just like free stuff on there. And then if you do like a reading, like I did my son's chart with them just because it was easier to pay $5 than to, actually find my little CD software, which I can't find. And it was a fantastic reading design for the parents raising a child, and just certain things to look out for, and, being aware of, maybe some invalidation pain points and stuff like that. And that site is really great. So I'm not at the level. If I would have kept going, I would have got there. But so I'm not, as good with astrology as some people. But I think it's really great to be aware of things that are related to how you view the world and how you treat people around you. And um, it helps you to be a better person if you're aware of that, and you can be aware of certain strengths and you
Sure.
know
What do you think the connection is between astrology and the physics of the universe?
reality. Be real life. Um, yeah, it's always funny because I work in biotech, and I always think like if I say anything about astrology, are people gonna think I'm just like totally weird or whatever? But I like to think of it kind of like an instrument, right? Because everything is sound, everything is vibration, everything's energy. And if you were to pick up a bass or a guitar, they have different number of strings. The strings are very different. They're different thicknesses. They're tuned differently. The first strings are different. Or I think they are, right? Yeah, you have the extra E and guitar, but like they can still play the same notes, but one might play certain bars more easily, versus another. You have different movements. One you can, one might flow and melody a particular way more easily versus another, but they can still play the same notes. They can still play all the same barcodes, maybe not the same bar chords, but they can. You can work your way around it, and you can make it work. And and we're affected by other things. If you hit the E string on a bass, the guitar E string might start vibing. So I think about things more so like from a musical standpoint, from an instrument standpoint, because there's no excuses. Like if your string breaks in the middle of a show and you're a guitar player, like hopefully you know how to find that note another way. It may not be easy for you, but if you're proficient in your instrument, you'll find another way to get there. And with astrology, you don't have any excuses. Just because I'm a Virgo doesn't mean that I get to be annoying. Doesn't mean that I get to, like, be ridiculous all the time, but I can, and so I try to be more aware of that. And then I look at my fire side. I have Aries, Leo, and Sag like real up close, and I look at where those help me versus where they hurt me, and I try to bring it all together and just integrate. So, unfortunately, scientifically, we don't know exactly what the validity is of astrology, but we do know that you can't prove it wrong. There's no science that says astrology doesn't exist. Even when they tried to say, like, oh, well, the sky has changed. And so if your zodiac is this and it's actually this, like we didn't know that, like we weren't looking at the sky. It's already adjusted for that, So there's no science that says, okay, astrology doesn't exist. But there's no science that says it does exist. But if it's good stuff and it helps you, then yeah, anything that can make you a better version of yourself, be aware of it. Whether it's came out of a fortune cookie or a horoscope, or maybe you just woke up and looked in the mirror and it's like, I
I agree.
this is what I
Self
want.
awareness is really important. And if you can pay attention to your astrology or even with tarot cards or whatever, a lot of that is the answers coming from within ourselves, but being more aware of strengths and weaknesses via a chart or sun sign or rising sign or whatever. I think anything that helps us be more self aware and kind of focus on our strengths and try to work with our weaknesses, I think is a very valuable tool. So, like you said, whether it
Yeah,
is, scientific or not, it still is helping a lot of people to adjust the ways that they live their lives in a productive manner. So,
right.
Roxy actually has a really good question.
I just saw
She
that.
was
Yeah.
wondering, how do you do a chart? I can't seem to get any accurate information. Also, what does it all mean? Sun, moon, rising, houses, etc.
Good question. Thank you for asking that, Roxy. Um, Cafe Astrology, I think, is a good website to check out. Their prices are reasonable. There's a lot of free stuff, and I like the write ups. They have depth and they're articulate. So you could just pop it on there. You can probably do this stuff for free. Just spend some time on that website. Uh, there's other places you can probably look it up, but essentially, this what they're going to look at is a very granular look of what the sky was like when you were born. And so every little thing is just perfectly kind of calculated, and it changes every 15 minutes. So at least with the rising sign, the sky. So if two babies are born within an hour of each other in the same hospital, it's they're not going to have the same chart. They're not going to have the same, zodiacs. Also, the longitude and the latitude affect it. The position. So you'll need, ideally, the exact time of your birth as well as the city, so they can figure out where that actually was. The sun is what everyone kind of knows about when you think, like, oh, I'm a Virgo and Sammy's a Sagittarius. That's because our suns are in those zodiacs. So that's more so of, how would you describe the sun? The sun is definitely how you identify largely. It's a big part of your personality. Whereas
Kind of
the
what you present
rising,
out to the world.
hmm yeah, exactly. But the rising is more so how people see you. You and it has an influence. Like I said, I'm not the best on this stuff, but the rising is definitely a big part of the personality. It can be if you allow it to, but more so less of your conscious awareness than the sun, but more so what people see outside. Right? Can you elaborate better on that? The sun, the
Yeah,
rising.
yeah. I would say rising is similar to the sun in what it is that you present out, but yeah, it is more so like the way that others tend to perceive you and your energy that you put out,
Yeah,
as
the
opposed to the
moon,
moon, which is more what is inside of yourself,
real
like your
deep.
private parts. Yeah.
And it may not be that consciously aware to you, because it could be pretty deep, like more of your hidden shadow side that you are only somewhat aware of. The moon, it definitely has to do with emotions too.
Uh oh, you're froze. Oh no, Franny, you're frozen.
I need to know where his Venus is. And no, not in that way. I need to know, like, relationship wise, how does that person express themselves? Because I'm a Venus Leo and I need that affection. But if you had a more conservative sign like Capricorn, Venus Capricorn, it's definitely not going to be as compatible with someone who has like Venus Leo. And so when you hear this stuff all the time, I'm like, oh, well, my husband's a Gemini and we're not supposed to get along. And well, it doesn't really matter. Like my husband is a Gemini and usually you don't work out in, long-term relationships as typically as maybe whoever else, but as they say, um, but having someone whose natural love language is compatible with yours is important. So that's one place that I would explore there. And Mars too, just your general demeanor, your general emotional kind of vibe. That's a big one.
I would be really curious to have my chart done at this point in my life and see all of those little details, all of the planets, because I've never been really sure what they all mean specifically. I never looked too deeply into it. I've always entertained the idea of astrology, and I think it's very, very interesting. And like I said, anything that helps somebody be more self aware is great, but I've never known if I could put a lot of stock into it because of, just the wishy washiness of the physics behind it. But I do think it's super interesting. And I would like to do my chart at some point, and maybe you
Yeah.
could help me read some of that so that it would make sense. And our chart is the same from when we're young and when we're, ancient and old and on our deathbed. And I find it so interesting that people change so much throughout their lives. So
Yeah. I
if your
think
chart
certain
is done as a
aspects come and
child,
go.
it might not actually speak to who you are at that moment, but does that mean that that's who you will evolve to in the end? Like there's a lot of different aspects of this that make it a little bit confusing for
Right.
people,
And
like
some is more dominant than others. And also, one thing to add, everyone has every single zodiac in their chart. You can't escape it. Even if you don't have a planet there, it's still going to, fall into one of the houses. So you see different aspects come
interesting.
alive. You know what I mean? Like you can't escape it. If there's that one sign that you hate, it's still inside you somewhere. And, certain times of your life that might get more excited, it might be more dominant. Other times, no. And hopefully we evolve, because I have my annoying Virgo side, which is also a very powerful like sign for planning and strategy and just the passion of the Virgo and the work ethic and the stamina of the Virgo, and there's other areas where that's not good. And my husband's like, clock out, like, go
For
pay your
sure.
expense report on a Saturday night, so just be aware of yourself and whatever helps you along the way, it's good to have a manual sometimes and then you can rewrite the code. And I think that's probably what gets people in a bad way with astrology is that they feel like they don't have control of their personality or their, you know what I mean? It's just like, that's
That's
some,
the spooky part for sure. It's like I want to feel like I am me because I have chosen to be me, and nobody or no planets or nothing could make me be who I am. But I have to say, it's very uncanny sometimes when I have read parts of my chart where I'm like, fuck, how do you know that? And I've also
yeah.
done the what is it, the Briggs Meyer
Hmm.
personality test. And if any of you have not done that, that is so fucking interesting. Where there's, I don't remember exactly how many types of personalities that there are, but you do this test and it puts you into a specific category. And reading what came up from that, I was like, holy shit, this is like 99% me nailed down to a T. And it's creepy because I'm like, here I am thinking I'm just me and I'm so unique. Everybody thinks they're so unique. And then here I am on a website, a page that says exactly who I am and how I respond to situations and yada, yada, yada. And then you put that next to, your chart and horoscopes. And it makes you wonder, where does free will come into play? Like,
That is a
affected?
very good question, but the reality of it is that we're all affected by everything. You know, we are who we are, but I mean, just the fact that we have the electricity and we have everything, Alexa and Siri and all these like convenient things, and like just our way of life now. And I mean, obviously, people across the world have different ways of life, but how dramatically different your life might be versus your parents and their parents and generations. And I mean, there's just the reality of how people are affected. We're affected just by the news. I mean, it's been a challenging couple years for everyone, pandemic and whatever politics might get in your craw or whatever. But I mean, people are affected, and it affects your epigenetics, if nothing else. And you do pass that on. So there's so many things that influence us consciously and not consciously. This is we share this planet and this reality, and who knows what other realities might exist.
That's very true. Very, very true. Roxy has a question about what is your overall view on horoscopes? That is a very good question.
Like the kind that you read in the newspaper, not so much, because I mean, it's just looking at your sun sign. Or I mean, if you're asking horoscope, like, this is, your chart, this is how you were born, so what does that mean for you moving forward, which is probably a more technical version.
I bet she probably meant like horoscopes in the
In the
paper or on
newspaper.
yeah. Well,
Yeah,
newspaper.
not so much, because it's just going to deal with your sun. And if you unless you have a lot of experience with astrology, it's probably going to turn you off. So if you really want to give it a chance, do your chart and look at some of the main players, like your rising and your moon, in addition to your sun, maybe your Mars and Venus, and see it from there. But I mean, people get really into casting, and I've seen different astrology episodes that people do when they're doing horoscopes, and they can be really cool. They can have a lot of wisdom. There's some good people out there that could probably transcend and can probably provide information that is more connected to just reality and just the shared reality that people have, and things that are going to affect people more holistically. I think that there could definitely be wisdom there. I am more so of the disposition where I like to work the energy. I like to be a conscious creator. And sometimes I'll, try to look out into the future for the purpose of cleaning the energy, cleaning it up, grounding stuff, and calling in stuff. And so with that, just kind of way of life, I'm less interested in what the stars and what all this other jazz is over here, unless it's, maybe Mercury's retrograde, or maybe there's some really just strong influences that can get people a little worked up more easily. Maybe there's a little bit more friction in the air. Otherwise, I'd rather just be focused on myself and how I can be a better version of myself, and carving up that future with intention.
That's a pretty good answer for that. Does anybody have any questions in the chat about astrology before we move to the next point here? I think it's so interesting. You're one of the people that I know that has the most attention on astrology. And I think it's really interesting because, throughout our friendship, I've heard you reference it so many times, and it really does seem like it's a really good, helpful tool for you for introspection. And I was hoping that Roman coming out and you doing his chart, I was hoping that you would be pleasantly surprised at his chart,
I'm
surprise
worried.
chart 2 months early. Are you
I'm
worried?
worried. Yeah, because he's got a Mars and Moon in Aries. He's
What does
got a
that mean?
sun. Means he's going to have quite the emotions. He's just, or not emotions. That's not the right way to say that. Well, those are both for the, for emotions, the Moon and Mars. And Aries is a fire sign. On the good end, he probably won't be fearful. He won't be able won't be afraid to take action. He'll probably believe in himself. And Aries can be amazingly efficient. Like they could just accomplish and produce masterpieces because they don't get in their own way. But then the downside is maybe they go a little bit too fast and they're a little rough around the edges and maybe a little bit excitable and like maybe a little overly emotional. Who knows? And but my son is definitely not a sub. He does not like to be submissive. Even when he's getting his diaper changed, he's like, nope, actually, this is what I want to do. Yeah, try chasing down a baby and trying to put a diaper, on a baby. He
Oh
does not want to sit
man.
still. I mean, he just doesn't want to. And I look at
I'm
his,
really excited to see, since you have done his chart and you have this overall
yeah,
idea of what attributes that he will have as he grows. And I'm very curious to see if that all plays out in the way in which his chart says. So it's kind of a really cool experiment that over time you will be able to confirm or deny if these things actually are present in his personality. So
well,
that's kind of awesome.
yeah, I hope he can just, be equipped to deal with it. Because, like I said earlier, you don't have any excuse. You got to deal with what you got to deal with,
Yep.
whether it's
Well, I
more
think you'll be
difficult
a
or
really
not.
good guide for him through all of that, especially since you expect it. We do have a question from
Ready,
I Love Uncle
ready.
Scar.
Mm.
Once I had a friend read my birth chart, and it seemed the energy in the room was directed more at her than me. So I kind of starting to be meh about the whole thing. What do you say to people who are a bit worrisome about charting and astrology?
Uh, well, I'm sorry you had that experience. I think, people, when you're getting into any type of reading, sometimes matching energy can come up and it can have some, you know, domination where it shouldn't be. Um, but if you have a good source like Cafe Astrology or there's a Bahati Life. She's good. She's another astrologist. She's an actual astrologist. She actually knows what she's doing, and she does readings on YouTube. She brings in a lot of wisdom, but just be aware of what you're getting into, and maybe just the energy around. I'd say that the best sources are people that could just look at things from um, a psychological as well as a spiritual kind of viewpoint, and just recognize just the journey that it is to be human and the journey that it is to learn more about yourself and be willing to change. Some people have a real problem with that, but once you start looking into, stuff and reading, you ultimately facilitate, a reaction and potentially some change. So, be gentle with yourself and appreciate the fact that, your chart, your zodiac is you. It's like I said, it's going to change every 15 minutes and it's very specific to just like think about it like it's your instrument, it's your guitar. You are the guitar, and no matter what it is, maybe it's you have a tendency to do this, and that, and be aware of that. Like, is that serving you? Then, like, awesome, continue that. What about this? Where does that come up from you? And just try to proceed without judgment and enjoy.
That is good advice. I like that. So, yeah, if
Hmm,
anybody's
good.
interested, check out those links. And if you guys have any questions about anything specifically, I bet people can message you, and I'm sure you would be willing to help anybody out to make sense
Yeah,
out of their chart.
yeah.
So, switching gears a little bit, as you can see, the title of this episode is Philosophy 2.0. And you have created a fantastic group experience program. I don't even know what to call it, but Philosophy has been a really fantastic thing that you've been able to put out into the world. And I would love for you to explain to everybody what is Philosophy.
Philosophy. It's the original philosophy tea party. It actually started in like 2013, I think, or 2014, and I was hanging out with a bunch of gypsy punks, klepto, love you guys, and we were at their studio, and I wanted to bring some of these people that I was meeting, because they were just amazing artists, musicians, and philosophers, and just really interesting people. And I wanted to hand select some of the most like philosophically minded, people I thought would really enjoy going down that rabbit hole and getting deep. And we came together. It was a feast, and there was a lot of tea, and we had a fish bowl, and everyone got to write a philosophical topic question, and it went into the bowl. And we went around, and everyone got to MC a topic. So you could answer it yourself, you could ask other people, you could go around it, you could do whatever you want because you were the MC. And that went from 7 p.m. until well after 7 a.m. in the morning. And
Wow.
I think, it was pretty much, I think there was wine. There was no hard alcohol, and there was nothing else. It was just people really vibing, and it's really cool when you can create something like that, because it's just the energy. It's almost like just creating something else. The energy of that shared experience was built, and it becomes so magical how people can, to just really, you could just travel without any type of psychedelic substances and have these just earth-shattering experiences. And then it kind of evolved into going on the street and just actually asking strangers. And we went around Hollywood Boulevard a couple times now. Sammy's done it. Just going out and just having philosophical conversations with random strangers. I don't
That was
know
one of
what
the funnest things that I
inspired
have
that.
ever
Yeah.
done in my life. I have to tell you. Yeah, just to kind of let the chat know real quick. She had actually brought me out to LA to be present for Velocity at her house, which was absolutely fantastic. She had me be the co-host for that, which was the first time that I was able to sit in a full group of people at one of these parties. We all wrote different topics, put them in the bowl, pulled them out, and it just inspired so much incredible conversation, because anybody can put anything into that bowl and anybody can pull anything. And it was really interesting to see what everybody had to say. And I was like, I want to go walk around the streets of Hollywood and bring this fishbowl and stop random people on the street and see what they have to say. And a friend of ours, who is actually one of the members of the band Tartar Control, he was our camera guy. And it was me, Francesca, and him and Sean, and we walked around the streets. We started in Hollywood on Hollywood Boulevard, and I had this bowl and I had this microphone, and I was scanning. There's so many people on the streets, and I'm scanning, and I'm like, okay, who's it going to be? And I chose so many different unique individuals. The homeless guy sitting there with the sign, Freddy fucking Krueger, guy dressed as Freddy Krueger, Catwoman, which was fantastic. We just stopped people on the streets, and I was like, hey, I was wondering if you would like to pull a topic out of this hat right now, and if you can tell me what your thoughts are on this subject. And it was one of the most interesting experiences, because I don't know any of these people. I have no idea what any of their thoughts on the world are. And not everybody is able to go down into the deep rabbit hole on a dime like that. They're just walking down the street. They have no idea what topic that they're going to pull. And it was so amazing hearing some of these people's responses. It was very enlightening, and I really hope that it inspired a lot of people to, to think on this level. And then after we did Hollywood, I was like, we should go to Rodeo. Let's go to the place that is known as the most superficial, pretentious place in the entire fucking country. And let's see what those people have to say. Because although, this is like high dollar area, and some people might make the assumption that these people are, bougie and more surface, and what could they know about, life after death, or whatever, reincarnation, or any of this kind of stuff. We had some of the best answers that we got from the whole time while on Rodeo Drive.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. So I loved that we were able to take Velocity to the streets. And there is a video of that somewhere. unfortunately, the majority of that video, um, there was no audio recorded, which was
Yeah, bad cord.
very disappointing. So I think all that means is we have to do it again, and I will come up and we will do it
Yeah.
again.
Well,
But
I
it
think
was
you
great.
have some of that. Did we put that video out, right?
Yeah,
The
it's
second
I
video?
don't have a link to it. If we can find it, that would be great
Oh,
to put that up. Yeah, I think it was
there's a
about
YouTube channel.
maybe a quarter of it actually recorded, and it sucks because there was one specific conversation that was my absolute favorite, and the audio did not record on that one. And this was a gentleman on Rodeo Drive who had just fantastic fashion. He was a black gentleman, probably in his 20s, and he just had some really cool clothes on. And I was like, hey, I was wondering if you would be willing to have some deep thoughts with me, if you could answer this question. And I don't remember exactly what the question was. I think it was something to the effect of, if you had unlimited resources, what would you do with that? And he was one of the kindest people and most giving and caring people that I'd ever talked to. And he was like, I'm a fashion designer and I'm trying to like help inspire people, from underprivileged families to be able to rise above. And I would open this school for people that's absolutely free and to help underprivileged youth to know that they can pull themselves out of whatever and do great things in the world. And it was just like it was the most selfless answer, and we had a fantastic conversation. It was just so great. And you'd see somebody on the street and think, oh, they're wearing, $1,200 pants. What do they know? They'd probably be like, I buy a million Mercedes Benz or whatever, but it was so from the heart. And I was so sad that that was not recorded. But in another way, I feel so lucky that I had that experience, that maybe it was just for us in that moment. It was really
Yeah.
inspiring to see that there are people out there who have goodness in their hearts. Um, and you just never know until you stop and talk to somebody and ask them a deep question to see what their true feelings in the world is. So I would say to all of you, I would say ask the questions. If you're sitting and talking to a new friend or an old friend or a family member or anybody, just throw something out, like rather than just being just surface, oh, how's it going? How's life? How's the weather going or whatever? Like ask somebody what their true thoughts are on a really deep topic, and you might be surprised what you will hear. A lot of people really have a lot to say if they're being asked the right questions. So the fact that you do philosophy, I think, is fantastic because it gives people a voice to be able to share things that are really dear to them, and giving everybody a chance to MC, I think, is really cool because everybody gets that floor for themselves. And then when it's other people's chance to MC, anybody can pipe in and give their 2 cents too. So I think it's fantastic that me and you have sat in rooms so many times and had these kind of conversations, but to bring others in, and give everybody that chance to be heard, I think is really valuable. So I really love the fact that you were able to create such a wonderful platform for true discussion and revealing of one's true thoughts. It's really special.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, we gotta get more into it. I don't know that I actually put that video out of you on Rodeo. I may have just put out the podcast version. I'm gonna have to check on that stuff. But we did the Zoom velocity too, so it's continued to evolve, and I'd like to see it keep going. People enjoy that.
I think it should. When you came out here, she actually came up here to
Mhm.
Seattle, and we did a philosophy. I hosted it at my house, which was fantastic. And I chose some of the people in my life that I felt like would be good choices to join a discussion of this caliber. And I was wondering, did you ever put that up on the YouTube? Was that edited out?
No,
Because
you
that
were
was great.
that's the podcast called The Witching Hour. That's up there.
Okay. So is that also on Spotify, or is there links to that on the Domu? How do we get to that?
I don't know. I think we're on Spotify. I gotta get back into my my dean role some more. But if you go to the website, dominationuniversity.com, you can go to like, there's a Who Dat, like a about section, and you can go to Sammy's section, the Office of Personal Power, and you'll see every episode that she did. And so we try to organize it. We have different playlists. If you go to SoundCloud, you'll see the playlist. But we're otherwise everywhere where your podcasts should be available, including Spotify. It should be on there. Apple, Google, stuff like that. Um, but it's easy enough to find with those playlists. And then in the episode section, this is another area that's been meticulously cultivated by my Virgo side. Truly. You can go there, and every single episode has a write-up and has a video player from SoundCloud embedded into that. So you could listen right then and there. You could see the guest. You can see the links to the guest. And you can find what you're looking for.
That's awesome. Good job putting that all together and
Yeah.
organizing that. It's fantastic. So, since we're far apart, I really enjoyed getting that Zoom philosophy together sometime, and I think that that would be a fantastic thing to continue to do. I really love that because for myself, like, I have a lot of introspective things in my head all of the time. Like, maybe not all the time, but very, very frequently. I seem to see things, in a more deep way, as do you as well. But navigating through this world, it's not appropriate to talk about these things a lot of times. We have to kind of put this costume and this mask on to get through normal days. And we all just have to try to be surface when that is needed. But having all of these things inside of us, like, it's such a great avenue to find other people that can continue to carry on these conversations with you. And seeing what everybody puts into the fish bowls is so fantastic because everybody has different things that are on their minds, So it's always really cool to see what kind of things that people are wanting to have addressed. So, from your recollection, having done all of these philosophies, why don't you give us a couple examples of some of the topics that people put in, and what were some of your personal favorites that either you put in or others put in? Like, as far as topics of discussion, what were some of your favorites?
Oh man, dude. I have such brain fry right now. I don't I don't know.
Well, okay, well, just in
It's
general, what
so
are some of
much.
your favorite topics, as far as, introspective topics to cover?
God, there's some good ones. I'll make you guys, what happened at Philosophy was that moment in time, and you can listen to it. But the type of topics that I usually like to contribute have to do with just our own perception of reality, our personal reality, and how that might intersect with spiritual paths as well as science and theoretical physics, and just just the nature of being a spiritual being or not, having a human experience, and just where that goes. And it's really interesting when you can kind of start to make some separations and just look at things in a more isolated case. Like, for example, I mean, would life mean less to you if there was no God? Like, if there was no afterlife, how would that change things? Like, how does it take away from your sense of meaning? And if so, where do you go from there? Because there's people who believe in God, there's people who don't believe in God, there's people who are agnostic, they don't know, and there's probably, people in between, and we change, and so it's interesting to see how people put together, just kind of existential reality, and what happens when things changes. What happens when, maybe something's not proven, and it's really interesting to me to, look at what it means to me if I can put myself in the viewpoint, because we don't know if there's an afterlife. We don't, and I say past lives, and I believe that there's, another reality than the physical one, but we don't actually know those things. So what is left when you take those away and you look at the potential that, when the lights are off, that's just that. Like, how is that going to affect your life? What are you going to do with yourself? You know, does that change the value that you are in this world right now? If this is all you get. And I think it's good to kind of shake it up because people can get caught up certain way. We all have our Kool-Aids that we drink, right? So to be able to kind of question like the Kool-Aid that you're drinking at the time or of your viewpoints, and just to recognize, we come into this world alone and we leave this world alone, and we don't actually know a lot of the inner workings of things. We don't actually know. Can we still party down or what?
That's an interesting quote that you just said, because that's something that I have been more aware of over more recent times. And it sounds really doom and gloom, but I don't think it's meant like that. But we come into this world alone and we go out alone. And that doesn't discredit the relationships that we have while we are here. It's all, what makes us who we are. And I think one of the most wonderful aspects of being a human is our personal relationships that we have in the time that we are here. But when it comes down to it, in that moment, we go out on our own. And that experience that we have when we check out of this body, wherever it is that we go, that is personal to only us. And it's not something that we can share with anybody. It is just us on our way out. And I think that used to make me feel more unsettled when I was younger. And now that I have grown like more into myself, I feel honestly a little bit more comforted in that fact that what we have is right now. The time is now, and what we choose to do with that is so important. And the people we choose to have in our lives, like, we should be making good choices with that, because this is what we have. We create our own reality in this way. But in that moment where we check out, it's just you and the universe, or your God, or the lights out, or whatever it is. Like, we come and we go, and it's a very personal experience to all of us. And, I wonder if what it is that we truly do believe in this life affects the experience that we have on our way out. For example, people having near death experiences and saying that they saw Jesus, or whatever. They saw something that's very specific to them and their belief system. And I think that kind of like What Dreams May Come, where, Robin Williams creates his own environment that's in the painting because that was something that was very dear to him. I wonder if the power of the mind, which I do personally feel that our power of the mind creates so much of our experience here and in the hereafter. So, what are your thoughts as far as what happens when we die? And is that a direct result of our human minds and our personal ideas on what that looks like?
Hmm. It's really hard to say, especially the second half of your question. And I'm a certified intuitive healer, technically, clairvoyant healer. So I've done over 1,000 hours of meditation and just different energy work, and we've had these experiences, and a lot of this energy work has influenced the foundation of the the world beyond this one, as I as this physical brain tries to gather and understand it. So I don't think that we are probably able to fully understand, even if you're on a spiritual path and you're dedicating yourself to spiritual work. We're still at the end of the day, we're humans trying to interpret all this stuff. But I think that there is a part of us that goes beyond, and I think that there's a lot of support. So even if you're not religious, there's different people that you've met along the way, and you probably have had a spiritual path or had whatever spiritual views you've accumulated through your different incarnations. And I think the way you go out, I think that probably affects you too. But I think there's a lot of support. I don't think that people are just kind of going out and, whether or not they're seeing a white light. See, it's interesting to think about that, like one person seeing something versus the next. I think there's probably a variety of different sensory experiences someone might come back to earth with if they actually have a near death experience. And but I think the relating to that, the coming back, is that physical brain of yours that has to try to gather and put together and express the experience that you thought. So, there could be just a physical component of that has nothing to do with that other world if it exists. That is more so the product of human brain trying to connect dots. You know what I mean? Um, but I think that there's a lot of it, comes down to us and what we want and where we've evolved and what we want to do next. And, you know, it's hard to really fully understand. Like, this is such an esoteric thing, but I think it's probably a little bit more organized than just like, oh, I'm coming through the tunnel and there's this white light. And it's like, what would you end up in, like the HR office of heaven? You know, like some angel HR lady kind of, checks you in, and then like I don't know if it's that. Who knows what it's like in that way? But
Do you
again, this
feel
is
like
my
it's
human brain.
different for the individual based on their own experiences here as a human, or do you think that there is some kind of standard place
Threshold
or
state.
yeah, like do you think that it's pretty much the same type of initiation for everybody that moves to the other side, or do you feel like it's personal?
I think it's probably a little bit of both. And it probably depends on where you're at. I've done a lot of meditations where you're, in a lot of ways, like you're not fully leaving your body, but you're partially leaving your body and you're out of your aura and you're doing stuff. And I think there's probably a certain like fluidity that your soul will gain, like as you evolve spiritually and you develop more of your understanding of yourself and you gather more energy and awareness around that spiritual you. I think you take that with you. And I think a lot of the tools that you can do, like if you do energy work or if you work the grid, like shamanic stuff, I mean, I think a lot of that stuff is really universal. And so I think it is valuable. I don't think the spiritual work you do here is going to end when you go. I think you'll be able to take that with you. But along the way, I think that we have the support that we need, to get through it all.
That being said, do you feel like those of us who identify as older souls have a little bit more control or power as it is when going to the other side? Do you feel like there's some kind of accumulated knowledge that we can have to bring with us that help enhance that experience for us?
Yeah, I do. And I think this is interesting, but in trying to talk to people who have passed away, there's usually a period of time where they're not so available. So if like your loved one passes away yesterday and you're trying to like reach out to them psychically and have a conversation with them tomorrow, probably not. They're probably still adjusting and they have stuff going on. But when you are more evolved, and this was the case when my grandma passed, who was an amazing old soul, and she was Christian. She didn't do anything esoteric necessarily. Probably a part of her that had this type of wisdom that even people who study the same religion may not have grasped it the way she had. Like she just had a real wisdom to her, and she had bounced back real fast after her death. She was able to be communicated with within a couple months. And I think that's just who she was as a person, and how she went out. She was a very spiritually evolved person, and she probably always has been.
How did you contact her?
It
What
was
was
a
your method?
reading. I was taking a clairvoyant one course with Catherine Schiff then, and it was actually a joint reading. I had another student with me who was doing the reading, and Catherine was doing it too. So I actually wasn't reading; I was being read, which was interesting because I was just different pictures were coming up that the other person was able to see, and it was kind of nice. It
And
was
you felt
nice that
confirmation that that was her coming through?
yeah, yeah, for sure.
That's really cool. That's a really special experience. I saw a medium a few years ago, and I'm convinced it was my grandmother that came through. Like the whole nature of the reading had nothing to do with that. I was going there for a very specific purpose, trying to deal with certain things. And before we were done, she's like, "Is there anything else that you would like me to look into?" And I asked her to see if she could find my grandmother and tap into her, and it was uncanny the answers that she had. That was my grandmother speaking through her. This woman didn't
Yeah.
know my grandmother at all. And I, upon leaving, I felt confirmed that that was my grandmother. It was very strange. And then this is a really cool thing too. I had asked, what is the thing that you miss most about your earthly experience? And she said, she wanted soup and a peach.
Ugh,
That she missed soup and a peach.
oh my God,
And
that's
I told my
precious.
mother about this later. And I was like, it was so strange. She said that she missed soup and a peach, which was my grandmother's sense of humor. You know, of course, it's food. And my mom told me something that I never knew. She says peaches were your grandmother's absolute favorite. She loved peach everything. And I just never knew that about her. So my mom was like, that makes so much sense that it was specifically a peach. And that was like, wow, that's extra confirmation to me that that was her coming through. It was really, really cool. So I'm glad that, we've both had the opportunity to be able to speak with or have contact with somebody that we love who has passed on. So that to me kind of gives me a little more confirmation that we do retain our sense of self and our human memories on some level whenever we do depart this world. It's really cool. It's really cool to kind of have that insight into that other realm. I love it. It's really cool.
Yeah, for sure.
As far as your clairvoyant class, I would
Mhm.
love for you to tell me about this class and some of the different subjects that you breached in this class and some of the things that you have learned, like some of the tips and tools that you learned in this class. That's very interesting. I've also taken, me and Dusty took a clairvoyant class as well. And I know quite a few other people that have. And of course, each teacher is going to share different things. So I'm just
Yeah.
curious what it is that you gained from this class you took.
I've taken a number, and it started with Intuitive Insights, which is a school in San Diego. And I took their women's intuition and their psychic tools class. And then I've taken some other stuff. Catherine was connected to that, so I took a course with her, and then another graduate course through the Den, which I think she's connected with, and then I've done other stuff with her. But to just kind of describe the stuff that we do, so it's the idea that you have this energetic body, that there's this energetic world that is connected but different than the physical world and the physics and all the scientific stuff that can go as far as it can go at the moment into quantum and whatnot, but that there's this other reality outside, like the ethereal body, the chakras, the meridians, and the other different energy centers that have been studied and taught for centuries, from around the world, out of China and India and stuff. Um, I think a lot of this energy work actually came out of the Philippines, and some of it's connected to the Berkeley Psychic Institute. But at the end of the day, it's just, you're just working the grid. You're working in this space. And the coolest thing about it is that it's a space that, you don't need to physically move stuff and like, it has to be mechanical. It doesn't work like that. It's energy, and you can just do it with your intentions. You can just create tools yourself. And so that sense of independence is really, really important to me because shit can get real weird, right? Especially in spiritual stuff. I'm always just completely turned off if I see a psychic on Instagram or someone's like contacting me and there's this sense of urgency and all this bullshit, or like I have this and you don't, let me sell it to you or whatever. I hate that shit. So I really liked the foundation of what I was learning and where it was going. And it's all about you being able to work your energy. And you can just start doing that. If that alone inspires you, just go into your meditation and see what else that you can do. And we have some basic philosophies, that's grounding, releasing, using, just the flow of gravity to let go of stuff. And and then you have just the idea of that you get to consciously bring in the energy that you want, the energy that's me yesterday. Why is there a part of me that's still in yesterday? So I didn't check off my to-do list. Like, can I deal with that? Can I pull myself together and put the to-do list? Is there a part of me that's in the future? Going wine tasting this weekend at Walla Walla, Washington, actually, a bachelorette party. So I'm really excited. There's a part of me that's into the future, that's thinking about the bags, the pack, and checking in. And there's, how do I pull myself together and just, and contain my energy into that present moment where it is actually most useful. And I can go out into the future and I can go out to the past, but I just got to remember to gather myself. So working with this energy, it's just really, really basic stuff, really basic. I want myself together. I want to be contained. I want to be in my space, and I want my energy and intention to be where I can actually use it. And then from there, you just look at what's stopping that. Do you have a invalidation picture? Was there a program that that was fed to you, maybe force fed, that said that you're not allowed to work your intuition, that this is not your power, that this is, oh, this is evil, this is bad, like, oh no, don't do that, go talk to the priest, or oh no, go to church and save your soul. And no, like it doesn't work like that for me. I like to be in my space and clear that stuff away. Anything that threatens your personal power and your ability to have wisdom, that can have really long standing harm. And sometimes it gets stuck with like some guilt, or you can have a very innocent emotional reactions to other things that don't belong to you, and they can, especially if you're an empath, they can get stuck in your space. And so to be able to kind of go through your own pictures, go through your own energetic body and decide, and it's amazing, even doing this as long as I've done it, I find pictures, I don't know if I can remember this, and I apologize, I'm fried this time of night, but there's stuff that comes up for me, on a somewhat of a regular basis, where it's some old picture, some situation that was really invalidating in middle school, or it was some other person's shit that just, they wanted to feed me their bullshit and I was nice and I listened, and then there's a part, and then I have that guilt, or I have their shit affecting me, and that fierce energy. That's, so just being able to clear through that and just having an awareness of how the energies can run based on centuries old wisdom. Like I said, a lot of this stuff is going to originate out of ancient China and India. And then from there, it, anyone can do this stuff. You just put your intentions there and you start creating and you start cleaning.
I love that. Like, one thing that really struck me that you said, which I also truly believe, is that it's very personal to each one of us. So we can go to a class and we can get these tips and tools, but as long as you know how to identify your own energy, it is up to us to decide what it is that we need for ourselves. That there's not necessarily a textbook that we need to follow via a class. A lot of times you take a class and it's like, this is how you do the thing. And of
Yeah.
course, for some people that might be new to it or might not have as much self awareness, it might really help them at first to be able to have very specific things like, okay, do this thing. This is how you meditate. This is how you visualize boundaries and stuff. And I think that that can really be very beneficial in some cases. But I think that going along also with witchcraft, which actually being able to do any kind of craft where you are using powers of manifestation and energy manipulation, not in a negative way, but just, that's pretty much what the craft is. That I personally believe that it's kind of one and the same, where it all comes down to ourself and how it is that we choose to interpret the information and how we choose to focus that information. So there are good tools to have. So in this class, some of these tools that you learned can be integrated, but it's not limited by these things that we are taught. And same thing with ritualistic magic and all of that stuff. Like, sure, you can look up in a book a spell to manifest this specific thing. Do you have to do it exactly the way that this book or whatever blog says that you have to do it to get that result? Personally, I don't believe so at all. I think that it's a really nice framework to be able to work with. But when it comes down to it, it's that personal power, which is why I wanted to be the holder of the office of personal power, because I do believe so strongly that whatever it is that we want and need is all available within us. So being able to have some kind of, basic gist or framework really helps us. But when it comes down to it, it's how we choose to go about it, what feels right to you as an individual. But some of the baselines, like as far as being able to meditate and be aware of your chakras, that's a really good thing to learn if it's not something that anybody's ever done before. I think that that's
Sure.
really cool things that you can learn, is like, what do your chakras feel like, and what does it feel like to ground yourself, and what does it feel like to empty out some of these blockages that you have. So there is some really valuable information that can come from that for sure. But I really like the fact that you took it as a more personal experience too, to take that like structure and be able to make it your own. So do you feel, as well as for the craft that you do, does that all come from within yourself, or do you tap into any other energies or beings or anything to actually manifest in the way that you personally manifest?
Like, we're getting deep. We're getting deep. Um, I do work with my guides a little bit, not like a ton, but hold on. I work a lot with vibrations. So, for example, if I'm trying to manifest, I have to be in a vibrational position where I can receive, and I can't be holding on to stuff. So I do a lot to just try to recalibrate just my general vibe. What are my dominant thoughts? How do I feel about this? What is the story here? Is there a story here? Can I let go of that old story and make, room for a new story? So, you know, just really kind of trying to recalibrate my own energy, as well as calling in energy, is a big one for me. Like, for example, joy. Joy is it's like a state of being, right? It's not just an emotion. Like, there's not like, a formulaic, like, insert this and then out comes the joy emotion, even though that might be ice cream. Out comes joy. It's not necessarily like that. Joy is really like a state of being and trying to get into that higher vibe place. I've been working with amusement lately. So, and this might be a little bit more relatable. working in biotech, it's hella competitive in like the worst way possible. Like it's bullshit. Watch the Theranos trial and just know that biotech is very poorly regulated or not regulated at all. So that's the
Hmm.
world that we live in. And so trying to navigate through that competition energy, which is very erratic and it gets very heavy. I don't want to find myself going into survival, and getting into just that really trudgy, like you're in the trenches. It's that heavy competition energy and everything's like, rah, da, da, da. So trying to pull myself up into amusement, and some of the visualizations that I've been doing are all like Mario Brothers, like because I haven't played games later on, but when I was a teenager and younger, Mario, Super Mario 3, I think was the one, Nintendo
It's my
64.
favorite game ever. Yes,
Yeah,
Mario
those
3
are
all
my
day.
visualizations. So I've been doing a lot of visualizations, and everything's Mario Brothers. And I'm getting all kinds of good mushrooms, some one ups, some smashing bricks and shit. And that
Love
is
that.
how
That's so cute.
that's how I'm navigating through a lot of my just the stuff I deal with on a daily basis, which can really pull me down and you know get me into survival. I need to be up at a higher level. Like I need to be out of that space. I need to be in a space that feels good. I know I have a job to do. I have things that I got to navigate from one place to the next. And how do I get there? Do I want to be down here in the competition energy? I don't. I want to be up high. I need that ethereal, that higher vibe energy that gives me my wings and helps me flow into those spaces and continue on. So that's one of the ways. And I'll do different visualizations, but I drove to Fresno last week. I had a couple lunches up there and just working the energy of that. Like, what's the road look like? What's my route like? Like, here's me. I got to go to this lunch. I got to go to my hotel. I go to another lunch, and then I'm home. What does that path look like? And you'll see some sign sometimes where you have these cluster energies, and sometimes you'll have energy there that you can't get rid of. It's bigger, you know what I mean? Like a massive car accident. Like I'm not going to meditate my way through that, but you can notice like, okay, I don't know what this is. It's not grounding out. Maybe I check with my GPS and maybe I look for an alternative route, or here's some erratic energy here. How do we kind of heal that up? Like who's on the road? Can we give them a healing? Can I, like within myself, like where can I go within myself that's going to put me in a better position to be safe within the dynamics of this situation, which I only have so much influence over, but I try to work the influence I can.
So it sounds like you're constantly trying to purge and let go of things that don't serve you in that moment. So you're very hyper aware of the things that are helping you to succeed and some of the things that are dragging you down. That's what
Every
I'm kind
day,
of gaining. You're just constantly draining it out.
every day I'm running my energy.
How do you
Every day it's
visualize
heavy.
yourself dumping these unnecessary things out? Do you have a physical visualization that you do to let it go?
Yeah, I do a lot of grounding to the earth. Let the earth deal with it. Just so there's a lot of just releasing like a laundry chute, connected to the earth, grounded with the earth. And then I've done like blowing roses is a good visualization. I've done a lot of stuff with roses, which is high vibe. And I've done a variety of stuff. I actually, oh man, this is wild. Do I even want to go there? Oh, okay. So before I go there, a lot of the visualizations I've been doing with the Super Mario's, the high vibe one, has been like just smashing the bricks. Like this obstacle comes in front of me, and I'm just like just smashing the brick wall. Like in Mario, I'm just like, okay, go. Like, and it just smashes and it falls away, and I wade through it. But I had this energy the other day, a couple weeks ago, that was like a it was a very like a practically demonic. It was really nasty kind of energy, and it was just in my space, and it was around my right breast actually, and
Oof.
I discovered that. So I blew it to smithereens, and I tried to erase some of it, and then I hooked it up to source and let source deal with the rest.
Where do you feel like that came from?
I think it had been there for a while. It probably got in with like a little fear space of mine, and I had this fear. I had this fear of breast cancer for the last few years, and I think it probably entered into that space, and it got right there, and I had to I had to release that fear, because that fear is what it's holding on to. Like my space, when I'm in my space and I'm energetically healthy, and my, the darker heavy energy doesn't stick to that. So if this conversation is scary to people, just be you, you'll be fine. Stay out of fear, because it's when you have that heavier energy, that can be, people can bite to that. There's something to grab onto there. So watch your fear pictures, and let it go, because fear is not going to serve you, even if it's
That's a
there.
very, very good point. Is that fear seems to manifest its own self. So whatever it is that our
There's
fear
cracks,
is,
yeah.
like it's kind of similar to the idea of The Secret, which, I have varying thoughts on that specifically. But as far as the base of that concept goes, is that what it is that we put out a lot of times is what is returned to us. So thinking positively as much as possible, we're putting out positive thoughts and vibes into the universe. And when we have negative thoughts based around fear, that is being put out there as well. So therefore, it can be an attractive force just by us thinking about it existing in that space. And even with language, like saying, you know, I don't want to do this because then this will happen. Changing our language and in our own heads and verbally is, I am choosing to do this because this is the outcome that I want. If we continue to think in negatives and speak in negatives, even if it's like, well, I'm going to do this thing because I don't want this bad thing to happen, you're still focusing your thoughts on this bad thing happening. Even though you're saying you don't want it to happen, it's still manifesting in some kind of form, whether we like for it to or not. So, changing our dialogue, inner and outer, and trying to speak in a more positive way and think in more positive terms seems to pull in that kind of positivity to us. So releasing that fear, I think, is a really important thing to throw out there. That, I mean, we're all humans. We all have fear, of course, in one way or another. But if we can be aware of what that is, why we're fearful, and what we want the alternative outcome to be, if we can try to focus more on that, I feel like that tends to pull that positive energy towards us more. Like, a lot of people are very fearful about their finances, and rightfully so a lot of times. But, I grew up in a household where everybody was like, we don't have any money. We're totally afraid to buy these, pay less shoes because then we're not going to have money for this other thing. And it was always this constant stress surrounding money. And even though we had enough money to get by, there was so much negativity and fear surrounding money and everything that we bought that it just caused this perpetuating stressful cycle. And I feel like when we can kind of turn it around and be like, wow, I am so grateful that I can actually afford these Payless shoes when a lot of people are homeless and can't, or whatever. I am grateful for the ability to be able to buy them in this moment. I think it changes a lot. And if we're actually willing to step outside of ourselves and look at these things and change that dialogue a little bit and put it out in a more productive and positive manner, we can see changes. You can see those changes directly as a direct result of how we change that dialogue with ourselves. So, do you agree? Like, have you had to change the way that you think and say things and seen it be a little bit more positive things that come back to you?
Yeah, definitely. And for me, it usually started with post-its. And you could take something as simple as the word yes and write it on a post-it, and put it on your mirror, and look at that from time to time. And what is the vibration of that yes? Or something really simple like a, okay, two worder, just complicated mantra, I can. The vibration of I can is even more, it's a little bit more circular than yes. Yes has a nice open vibration. I can pulls it together, and so those are two very simple examples of, very impactful law of attraction, methods that have worked amazing for me. But looking at the story, you can have so much stuff, especially in that realm when it has to do with finances and survival and just, that basic stuff. I mean, it's incredible how many pictures of unworthiness may have been accumulated along the way. Shame and other stuff can come up, and then, I mean, even in myself, and I've accomplished things that I former versions of myself never thought that I could accomplish. But I was noticing within myself and my kind of between my throat and my heart chakra, just the whole fear of success. And I thought to myself, like, how could how could I possibly? But there was parts of me that, and I think there's probably even more areas to explore there. But you catch on to those little things, like what is the disconnect there? What is, why, if you're not fully in the saddle and you have everything figured out, you're like, yeah, this is what I do, this is what I want, and I go, with where I want to go with my journey that is life. I mean, there are probably aspects of you that are not fully in alignment with your higher self and what you actually want. And it's, you don't want to think that that's the case. You want to think like, no, consciously what I want. But everyone has their unconscious stuff. That's social psychology 101, and it's going to influence you. So finding and being aware of that part of you is like, oh, I want to do this, but, or I can't this, and just what is the narrative? Because what you say matters, and what you think matters even more. And below what you think, there are probably a variety of belief pictures and different programming that was given to you. And some of that may not be in alignment. So addressing those and looking to recalibrate and to tweak that, flip the switch. Your words, law of attraction stuff, meditation, and this is right in alignment with all that stuff. Check out people who have accomplished what you want to accomplish in life, and people who are embodying the traits and aspects and skill sets, that you value, and look at them and study and look at the way that they have been able to welcome that self and receive those things for themselves. And along the way, you'll probably discover the little parts of yourself that has that dissonance, and it's not, that needs a little bit of resolve.
That's a really good advice, to look to others who are successful in whatever it is that you yourself are trying to do, and to try to embody that energy. That's good advice. One thing I thought you said that really struck a chord with me is the programming, that
Yeah.
so many people are programmed with different things, whether it be just society or family expectations or whatever personal expectations that affect how it is that we feel about, our ability to succeed in certain things. And a lot of that is not from us. I mean, you are a very driven person. You have succeeded at everything you've tried to do. So I would dare say that some of the self-doubt that was in there probably wasn't even from yourself. That was probably put there from other people's unrealistic expectations of you, or whatever that was sitting in there causing this doubt. And it's such a shame, I feel like, that we carry those things, even those small things that we might not even realize at the time, is other people's expectations of us that can give us that self-doubt, and those just sit in us, and it's like poison in us. So being able to observe that and step back and be like, whose voice is this that's telling me that I cannot succeed? Is this my own voice? And if it is, why am I worried about this? Where does this fear come from? Or is this my mother's voice? Is this my partner's voice? Like, whose voice is telling you to be fearful of this? Like, would you agree with that? That a lot of it comes from,
Yeah.
this programming.
Yeah, definitely. Like generation after generation, especially, with like money for some reason, the whole like just the energy of money and finances and stuff. That can probably just because how that life changing that can be to us if you don't have it and you have those struggles and stuff. That stuff gets passed on really easily. But I think even within your own self, there's parts of me with my perfectionism and how do I resolve that, is can be a real personality weakness, that the other side of the perfection coin. And looking where does that lead me? This do I feel like I can be perfect? Do I have a healthy relationship with my desire to be, like where does that go? And you can have those little hiccups that I take full responsibility for those things. And it could be, a little bit of abstract like that. There's probably going to be less likely of a circumstance that you're just like, there's a very cut and dry specific picture that says, I can't do this. It might be, I don't deserve this, or is this okay? Like, is this sinful? Religion can provide a lot of programming, some of it good, some of it not so much.
Unfortunately, that is true. There's a lot of guilt attached to religion in not all, but a lot of circumstances where these are these rules that are decided by others thousands of years ago, what have you. And these rules are being presented to you. And regardless of who you are and where you're from and what your family life is, regardless of any of those things, you are required to act within these parameters. And if you do not act within these very specific parameters given to you, you are a failure or you are letting down God or your family or whatever. And that's one of the things that upsets me so much about organized religion is how they don't take, evolution in the past few thousand years into account about how we're living in a different world right now. And they don't take
Yeah.
individualism as an account too, that what's right for you might not be right for me or whatever. And I think we should all have the ability to look at our own selves and decide what our own moral code is and not having to feel guilty for human things. They're like, oh,
Yeah.
if you have, like sexy thoughts about people, like you better repent and you better like say you're sorry to God because God knows what you're thinking. And it's not okay that you looked at this woman and or man or whatever and had these unclean thoughts. It's like that is being a
Punishment.
human.
Punishment
Yes.
energy.
There should not be
Yeah.
punishment. We are all human beings. And I feel like a lot of organized religion tries to take that humanity away from us and says you are supposed to walk this path, this godly path, where you're taking aspects of our human experience away. And you should feel guilty that you are a failure or you are letting people down. And especially the idea that God's always watching and knows all of your thoughts. So even if you think something in private doesn't matter, you still have to say you're sorry for it. And I feel so sad for the people that have had that programming in them upon growing up and now they're adults, and whether they believe in these things or not, there's still that little bit um, of shame that's scratching around in their head because they're having to fight against it and be like, no, I am justified in doing this or being this. But it's almost like you have to work extra hard to justify these things as being okay because you were told so many times that it's not okay. And
Yeah.
it's
And
so sad.
it could just be like a comfort. You may not feel like full blown like guilt or this or that, but you might feel uncomfortable. Like, for example, I'm wearing pentagram earrings and I almost didn't because it's a little bit charged, but to me, it means spirit rules the elements, but I know it's going to attract someone who's like, oh my God, satanic earrings. I do declare it, like, and so I wonder to myself, like, am I safe? Does it, am I comfortable here? What is it? and I don't know. It's so funny. I like to think about when they first started taking some of the major religions and getting it together and like, okay, this is the manual, here's the rule book, the formula, whatever. And they started looking for those little regulations, like how are we going to whip them into shape? What are we going to tell them? What are we going to restrict? God, to be a fly on the wall. And those
For
discussions
that
with
discussion, how do we control the masses properly?
how do we,
Oh, you know what we
yes,
do? We tell them that God sees all their thoughts. So if somebody's watching you from within
imagine.
you, we don't even have to govern anybody because it's self-governing, because they're so scared that they're being judged by something that sees inside of their own head. Nailed it. Okay, we'll roll with that one. It's
Yes,
fucked up.
powerful marketing. I tell you what, it's really fascinating. Really fascinating.
It is. I feel like it's very unfortunate that that has come out of it, because I know that a lot of people find comfort and joy or whatever in their religion or their spiritual practices or whatever it is, And I'm not here to tell anybody what's right and wrong, but I do feel personally that it's wrong to put shame and guilt on people for not following through in the way that has been determined as the proper way. Obviously, you shouldn't go murder people and go, eat them or whatever. Like, there's obviously certain moralistic things that,
Yeah,
we all
deserving.
know we
Right.
shouldn't do. But when it comes to just some of the aspects of being a human, it's very disappointing that something that was supposed to be, spiritual and about love and about taking care of each other, and we're all part of the same thing, we're all made from this one source, and our job is to look out for each other. Jesus, story of Jesus, he was very selfless and was a healer and helped people and helped the undesirables and all of this stuff. And somehow we've gone from that to these people who are judging everybody, and, well, I don't want, to pay for people's fucking food stamps and all this shit, like everything's been so convoluted and switched over to a selfish way in a lot of ways, not obviously not in all circumstances, but it's just interesting how people morph things to benefit them specifically throughout this structure. It's like they're not going to believe everything in the
Yeah,
Bible, but they're going to
exactly.
believe what they want, or, not just the Bible, just any religious
Right.
teaching. They pick out what they want and then they just chuck everything else, and it leaves behind a gross residue of shame and blame and all of that doesn't really help people, I don't feel like, in their life personally.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some huge differences with someone, and I've had family members actually lost a couple aunts recently, and they were very, proud Christians, and I mean, I don't even know if proud is actually the right word. I mean, they were very much into their religion, but they were very spiritual, and they're very caring, and they embodied a lot of the positive things that religion has provided some people. They embodied that goodness, and the religion had been able to penetrate their spiritual life into a real valuable spiritual experience. And I have my world that I'm in, and it's not that my spiritual journey is any better than theirs, but they actually were living a spiritual journey, and you, versus the people where the religion hasn't penetrated into a spiritual reality. It's just in the mind, it's intellectual, you can block your thoughts, and then all the psychological realities get to really paint that religion and take it somewhere else and completely morph it into something that is hard to remember that it had any type of spiritual you know realm at all, how it was intended or how it was maybe transferred. And
Yeah.
so you see that with a lot of people, and that's what gives religion a really bad name, is those people where the religion is just words that have been shared and passed on to someone else. And a lot of those might be really manufactured neurolinguistics for the purpose of control, and influence and stuff like that. And unfortunately, that's the world we live in. You have a lot of that.
It is. It's so sad. But whatever people's connection to what they consider the source is, more power to them. If people believe that there is, one omnipotent being that created all of us and is looking out for all of us, and it gives them a sense of comfort and makes them feel like they're not alone and someone's looking out for them, like, who am I to tell them that that is not appropriate for them? Like, however people want to connect is great, as long as there's not judgment. There's so much judgment that's in this world right now. And something like, for example, like you wearing those earrings, what that symbol means to you. You know that I know what that symbol represents and what your representation of that is. But just the idea of being like, should I do that? Could it be perceived wrongly? If it's perceived wrongly, what is the outcome of that being? Like, we constantly have to double check ourselves. I guess we don't have to, but we do. We double check ourselves to make sure that we are representing ourselves in a way that is well received. And
Right.
I think a lot of that isn't necessarily from within us. It's all of that programming. It's trying to make sure that we are not being misunderstood in this world, or that people don't get the wrong impression of us. So a lot of the things that we do are, to kind of suppress some of the things that we want to do or want to put out there into the world, because we always have to be thinking about how it affects others, which is good in a way. But there's just certain things where I feel like I wish we didn't have to think like that constantly. We didn't always have to correct what it is that we are doing just to make sure we're not offending people or we're not putting anything negative out there. I mean, my leather jacket, I have a giant back patch. I have a Bad Religion back patch, and it's just a cross, X'd out. It's one of my favorite bands ever. Before we went to Texas, I was like, I don't know if I should bring this jacket. And Dusty's like, bring the jacket. Who cares? Just don't wear it around my grandmother. And I'm like, okay, you got it. Like, I would never want to offend anybody, and I'm not going to be like, fuck you, I'm punk. I'll wear it anyway. I'll offend whoever. I don't want to do that. So I'm mindful about that. But just wearing it around in Texas in a place that's so religious and super judgmental, and I already stand out anyway, I felt uncomfortable wearing that symbol on me because I felt like all eyes were on me and I was a target. Whether I was or not, I don't know if I was. And if anybody asked me, "Hey, what's up with your back patch?" I'd be like, "This is one of my favorite bands. This is their logo." And if they asked me even deeper, "Do you agree? Are you anti-Christianity?" If I was in a place where I could have a conversation like that, I would have no problem sharing that if somebody really wanted to listen. But just having that feeling of myself where it's like, oh man, I believe in this and I support it, but at the same time, like, how is this affecting others in my like ambient space, people that I'm not even communicating with, just at the gas station or something like that, So it is definitely a tough call where we have to live with our authenticity and do what it is that we feel is right, but at the same time, still being mindful about not being offensive or hurting other people's feelings or whatever. And that is this balance that I think, at least for myself, I've been trying to find. I'm a little more punk about it. And a lot of times I'm like, fuck it. If you don't like it, sorry. But there's also like, I would still never wear that around Dusty's grandmother because I know better. It would make her sad, Like,
We
being an
choose our
empath is
battles.
really hard.
Do I really want to go there with grandma? Is that the relationship that I want to have, where I'm, trying to convince? Then you're looking at it. Maybe it's my ego pulling up. What is my intention here?
Yep.
And it's all learning. But you know what? One thing I think is fascinating, since we're on the topic of this, think about every religion out there. Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Hinduism, what, and on and on. Every single one of those people, when they're trying to connect with God or source, they feel that. They feel something. Like, if I'm trying to
Yes.
connect with source, or if I'm trying to, like, maybe I see someone else, they need a healing, trying to connect them with source, it's very like, doo, doo. It's very instantaneous. Like, if you believe in a God or a higher power or something, like, and you take the time to try to resonate, it's like this instantaneous thing. You know, that electricity is right there, that feeling, like that connection. I think it's really fascinating that we all feel that. And there could definitely be some physical element of our, you know, anatomy that takes us there, but it also, I think, is beyond that. And I think it's really fascinating that everyone could just hook up to the same source that we, you know, most likely came from, whether or not you believe in it or not.
In their own way, though. Yeah, in their own way, but that's still, that energy still exists. Like Dusty told a story actually, on when I interviewed him, where he was talking about the first time he ever actually felt energy, truly felt it. He was at church camp, and everybody was like so into it, and they were all, yeah, fuck yeah, feel the power of the Lord, the whole thing. He started questioning aspects of the religion at that point, but he felt it. He actually physically felt it.
Mm.
So that just goes to show that regardless of what it is that people are feeling, whether it's legitimate, you know, as far as factual or not, if you get enough people in a room with each other that are all amped up or excited about a thing, you can feel that if you're open to feeling that. Even going to a concert,
Oh,
everybody's
yeah.
fucking jazzed. Everyone's so excited. We were talking about this the other day, small shows versus big shows. And one of the reasons I love stadium shows is because there's, you know, 20 or 30,000 people in one space and everybody's fucking pumped. And I can feel that. Being an empath myself, I can feel it, and it kind of helps recharge my batteries knowing there are so many people in one space that are so happy and joyful and having this positive experience, that you can feel that. So whether it be, you know, at Mecca, where they make the journey to Mecca and there's 2 million people in Mecca having this spiritual experience, or whether it's a Catholic mass or whatever it is, you know, just the fact that people are feeling this connection to something that's bigger than them, whatever that may be, I think is a really wonderful and powerful thing. And if we are tuned in enough to be able to open up to that, there is a lot of really positive things that we can gain from like that, just like bubble of positivity and happiness, you know,
Yeah.
like taking the greed and all of the, you know, the negative aspects out of some of these religious like experiences, but just looking at it as the, like the connection. Everybody finds their connection in their own personal way, and we can really feel that, especially as an
Yeah.
empath, which I know you
Oh,
are an empath as well, and you feel everybody's shit around you, which, as we both know, is a blessing and a curse simultaneously.
yes, ma'am.
It is
Yes, it
very
is.
connecting to others, but sometimes it's hard to shake off other people's energy. What do
Which
you
is
do?
why I thank you for asking. I try to get neutral, which is basically the line of defense that you have when in the energetic work that I do, philosophically. And there's other different modalities that will look at just the look to calibrate energy at like joy versus when you're serious, when you're judgy, when you're fearful versus courage. You know, what is the actual vibrational spectrum of that energy and how it affects us? But that neutrality is a safe zone because too you're not resonating too high, you're not going too fast of a vibration, and you're not going too low. You're kind of right in that, just that threshold of you could go anywhere you want to. And why I go there is because, you know, not all situations are appropriate for joy and amusement. Like if somebody just told me that they just had a terrible day and I'm like on my cloud, like, and I'm happy and I'm having a good time, can I actually stay up there and actually hear them? And, you know, if I'm trying to connect with them, I need to come down to their level to some extent, but I don't want to take on their emotions. And you know what I mean? I want to hold space for them and help pull them back up out of that potentially. So that neutrality is that safe space, you know, so you can actually meet people there and you can hold that space from going too low and not matching. You know what I mean? Like I can have a conversation with someone who's going through something terrible, or they're dealing with a significant amount of, of hardship. And if I take that on and I start feeling everything that they're feeling, that's not going to help them at all. It's just going to hurt the situation. So it's a way to position yourself and to position the energy in a way that it can be transmuted, and it can elevate, and you can keep everyone safe.
How do you do that? How do you find that neutral space in that moment? Is it a visualization? Is it just like a intention? Like, how do you do that? Because that's something that I think a lot of empaths could really benefit from some kind of assistance,
Yeah,
myself included.
yeah, it's definitely, it's both. It usually starts in meditation, and just to be able to kind of recognize, play around with the different vibes. What does it feel like? What does joy feel like? What does neutrality feel like? What does amusement feel like? What does sadness feel like? What is humor? And feel the different, and feel how you can instantly go there. If I was to think about something I'm serious about, what am I serious, my energy goes there, and I can feel that, versus if I want to think about, ooh, amusement, ooh, there's a little, oh, this cute little funny thing, I'm there, I can instantly go there. So play around with that, and notice how you can match, or you can vibrate where you want to vibrate. You can intentionally, decide, like, I want to raise my vibration. So being aware though of the vibes and the heavier energy that's going to hold you down, like being serious. If you're a Virgo and you're serious all the time, it's, learning to, try to get some slack there, trying to, hey, let's be fun, like, we're all gonna die someday anyway. It's like, fuck it, like, don't be too serious. You find your ways, like, to navigate and to intentionally align with what you want to align with. But neutrality is no different, and you can basically just turn on. Like, when you do this stuff a lot, you can just turn on. So in the moment when I have that situation, and I'm like, just, I find that neutrality and I hold that space, and I just breathe, and I'm ready to transmute if I can, or I'm ready to just kind of hold that space and not drop down. So just like that.
Interesting. Natara actually just had a good point. She says, for me, I found focusing on envisioning my aura around me, and I'm not absorbing the energies then. So, so in your way, Natara, you have a physical, visual boundary that you
Yeah.
set up to not allow others' energies to enter your space. I think that's fantastic. That's a really great method of doing that. I do have a lot of visuals for protection in various ways, but whenever I am speaking with somebody that's having a hard time or whatever, like, I don't have a visual attached to that. So I think that's actually a really great point, because I feel people's shit. So when somebody is getting really serious with me, I love being there and hearing people's real shit that they're going through. I feel it, like I physically feel it in my heart a lot of times. And I've been trying to find a way in my life to find that neutral space, like you say, where I'm here, I'm dropped down a little bit and I'm listening to you and I'm being supportive, but I don't carry that feeling of that energy with me when I leave this conversation. That's hard.
Yeah.
That's one of the hardest things of all time.
It is. And just, we talked about this earlier, like, you can create all your own tools. If things don't bother you, if you bounce back from stuff, if, I mean, however we deal with it, if you visualize your aura and that's your separation, just the idea of the intentions of it makes it true. This is what's up. This is me in my energetic world, and I own this space. The Just the intention to do that is provides so much power. I do a lot of filtering kind of stuff. Use like little grounding roses and centuries, and I create little filters rather than walls and stuff. Especially if there's like just
Hmm.
random energy, like you're on the road and people are looking at you, or you're in a public space and there's like that person who keeps staring at you. I'll put like a little rose up, and I'll put a photo of myself, or I'll put a driver's license photo, or let's say I look however I look, and I put a visualization of what I'm wearing, how my hair is styled. And I put a photo of me there, and I allow that energy. I draw everyone's energy to that space outside of
Wow, that's
myself.
really interesting.
Yeah. So, and
I
then I'll
like
just kind of
that.
ground it out. I do, yeah, the decoy roses is I think what we do, but
Interesting.
it's
That's
it's
actually
really,
fascinating. So you're still keeping your energy here, and that's not welcomed into you, but you are still saying, it's okay, you see me, but see me from here.
yeah, I do that. Just some other things to kind of finish up. I mentioned this earlier in regards to just watching those fear pictures, right? Keep that energy real light and neutral. So when the energy can't stick to it, it just goes. We pass, we have these connections, we're exchanging energies, and it goes back to where it's supposed to, or there's this little vacillation, where it's problematic is where the energy is stuck. Like, why is my mother's energy in
Yes.
my space right now? Oh my God. Or like, why is my energy still micromanaging my sister over there? Why is that's not healthy? How do I pull it back? So that's why I run my energy every day. So that my energy is in my space, and everyone's energy that I picked up is released, and then I don't have to worry as much about exchanging energy with other people, because I ground a few times a day right before I go to bed. Even if I'm too tired for a good meditation, I'm going to hook up to source real quick and just try to release some stuff, and I'm filling back in with me. So I'm constantly calling in my energy all the time. And when you're full of your own energy, you don't have those little voids and those little pockets in your aura and your other space that other energy can get into more easily. So you just want to, you know, be you in your space, and, have those intentions, defined in whatever capacity. And it's usually pretty helpful. And then from there, you can look to tweak, like, maybe my mother's energy gets here, or this is lighting up for me here, and then you can start to kind of uncover maybe some deeper area for your intention, or just learning. Sometimes we find ourselves mixing with certain people, and taking on their energy because they're able to teach us something, and we want to learn, but we haven't figured out yet.
Wow, that is so insightful. That definitely
Thanks.
really was something that I needed to hear, and I would say that some other folks in chat that are listening as well. I think that that will really help them as well. Just learning to be self aware and learning to let things go. But taking that moment to look into ourselves and seeing what things aren't ours, and just visually in whatever form letting that go. I think that's really solid, good advice. So
Thanks.
when you run your energy, just to
Mhm.
kind of make sense to some people that might not understand what running their energy is, can you real quick just describe what that means?
Yeah, so I'm connected to earth energy. I'm grounded. I'm connected in a way that I can just release. Like, so we usually use actual grounding cords and just use gravity, use just the physics of a siphon, and just a space for energy to go. Gravity can pull it, and other people's energy is naturally going to be heavier than yours and fall away from it. And then I'm also working with cosmic energy. So some of the high vibe energy provided by the universe. I usually try to tap into that. Some people might think of it as heavenly energy or God, or, whatever it is. If you're doing Reiki, or if you're doing another energetic um, healing modality where you're tapping into that chi or that universal energy, and it just, kind of comes through you. That's the sort of energy that I'm working with, in combination with the earth energy. And then I'm usually just, trying to create some type of like toroidal or Merkaba type, you know, cyclical flow. And along the way, I clear my chakras and make sure my chakras are spinning. What surface stuff do I need to polish up any of my aura because of maybe I was partying too hard or whatever it is. And then I'm gonna be working both sides of the chakras and just peeling. Like it's very common spiritual metaphor for the peeling the layers of the onion. So I'm constantly looking to like, okay, what's ready to be let go? Like, where do I need to shed my skin? Shed my exoskeleton has been like one of my bigger tag words. Trying to shed my exoskeleton, get all
I
fresh
love
and
it.
clean in my aura.
So it's good. You're just checking in with yourself and looking into each little region and seeing what doesn't belong and choosing to move that along and then filling back up with your own energy, with your own positive energy.
Just like brushing your teeth.
It's amazing. And you do this every day, every
Yeah.
single day, multiple times a day.
Preferably 3 times a day, but it's been more so like once a day with like a little, like a couple little touch up, a little real fast, kind of like, okay, okay, I'm ready. Let's go.
That's good. Yeah.
Little
It doesn't
tweaks,
have to be a whole in depth thing. It doesn't have to be a whole meditation where you check out from whatever you're doing. There's little things that we can do to
Yeah.
kind of let shit go or replenish. I have a
Yeah.
visualization that I do sometimes if I get stressed out at work, specifically, if I get a little overwhelmed, if someone's an asshole or whatever, and I'm like holding on to that and I can't let that go in that moment and I feel like it's affecting other things, I visualize a huge star over my head, like an actual like physical star, and I fill that up and I kind of suck in like if you're laying on the beach and you're sucking in the sun's energy. I'm feeling this like positive radiating force over my head and I let it kind of fill me up and then pop it and then just let all of that just come in through the crown and fill my whole body up until I'm kind of sparkly and filled
Yeah.
with this positive energy. And then I'm like, okay, all right. I feel like I was able to like refill with something positive and lovely. So, anything that we want to do to kind of replenish that energy, just come up with a cool visual and take Francesca's advice and figure out how to let shit go throughout the day. Maybe try dumping stuff out. Just do a check in with yourself every now and then and see what doesn't belong there and try to let it go. I mean, I think that's
Yeah.
absolutely fantastic advice.
Keep
That is really
Thank
great.
you. Just to add to what you said, keep it high vibe. If it's visualized like Donkey Kong smashing your garbage for you, and then it's like smash it's got and then blow up the photo, like just do you can do so much with playfulness, and just to validate if this needs to be said again, like I feel like it does. You do have the power. Start creating, start playing with your intentions, and you have the right to do that. You do. This is you and your energy and your world. Play.
Yep, it's all up to us and what we do with it. Everybody's given a different hand of cards, but it's all what we decide to do with that is fully in our control. We can't control outside circumstances, but we can control what we do and how we react to situations. So, having some really good tools like the ones that you just discussed, I think will help myself and everybody throughout their daily life to be the best that we can be and not to hold on to other people's shit. So that was very, very insightful. Thank you so very much for sharing all of this with us. I really appreciate it. This was
Of
really good.
course.
I'm always
Thank
so happy to
you.
have these kind of talks with you. You're the best.
I love you. Thank you so much. I'm
I love
glad I
you
get to
too.
talk about this stuff. It's hard to talk about it without feeling like I mean, depending on who you're talking about it with, it can be really vulnerable. Like, am I setting myself up to look like a crazy person because I have a spiritual path and I believe that that reality exists beyond the physical reality that we all know. But it's great, and it's nice that these conversations are becoming more common, and people are being empowered and they're breaking away from programming which may not have served them, and they're writing their own. There's so much creative stuff that's available to us all right now, like this podcast. What a
Yeah.
delight.
There's a lot of breaking the cycles. that I'm
Yeah.
seeing in our generation. You know, we were raised by people who were essentially born and raised in the 50s, some of them in the 40s,
Yeah.
you know, some of them, you know, the younger folks maybe a little bit later, but, you know, at least me and you, our generation, were raised by people who were born in the 50s, much different world, who were raised by our grandparents who were born like in the 20s. There's a lot of outdated stuff that has been passed on to us, and this new generation is seeing leaps and bounds of changes in the way that we are, you know, existing in this world, and the creativity, and we don't have to follow these very specific molds of like the American dream, and if you don't do these specific things you're a loser, and if you don't have a child you're barren and a loser or whatever, you know, like there's a lot more options for us to follow our own paths now, when before it was a lot harder for people to feel supported in following their own paths. So
Yeah.
we're moving
I was,
forward and we're breaking the programming.
yeah, I don't want to sound like I'm coming across a negative tone, but to say our generation is doing that is, I think, a little bit much. We're doing it, and I'd say maybe half of our generation, half at best. But I don't know
Sure.
that our generation, I think it's the younger generations that you'll see a little bit more of the really dramatic changes that we need. But you and I and people like us in our generation, we're all for it. You know,
Yeah,
we're not just
I feel like,
rooting. We're like camp counselors. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah. No, I
yeah,
think Gen
we're
X
not
kind of started
afraid.
this change, you know,
Uh huh.
of self awareness, not self
Yeah,
awareness, but taking the
just
responsibility
rooting
for their
stuff
own lives
up.
and not letting society choose what it is that we do. And as we have gone forward since, all of the new generations, it's just more and more and more of breaking these chains from
Yeah,
what these expectations were before. So it's continuing to move forward. And it's really wonderful. And I love seeing some of the older folks who are really embracing this change too. It's really cool that they were
yeah.
raised by people born in the 20s, you know, and that everything is this way. It's very specific. And some of them are really embracing this change of like, fuck it. Like Batty Winkle. Have you
Yeah.
seen that lady, Batty Winkle? She's like 100 years old and she wears rainbows and these like sparkly glasses, and she's just like the most awesome fun old lady of all time. You know, you never would have seen that in the 40s. They
Right.
think she's
They
crazy.
would
They put her
honor
in an
that.
insane asylum. But
Yeah,
people are being
exactly.
able to express themselves in their own ways now without having the confines of societal expectations that are taking control of everything. So it is really
Right.
special. It's really, really
Yeah.
cool. And I'm glad that we're a part of this change. It's a really special time in human existence that we're changing, and you know, we're getting a little more comfortable with us being up to live up to our own authenticity. So you are absolutely an authentic human, and I am so grateful to have you in my life, and you will
Oh, I'm
be
so grateful for
forever.
you. I know. And then the next one, the next life, if you come back, oh, maybe it's another planet. If not back at this place, then we'll another rock. We'll have to keep
I'll see you
the
on the
party
flip
going.
side somewhere, but I'm not coming back to this one anymore, and that's okay. I've
That's okay.
felt it since I first came here. Like this is it's my last round, so I'm trying to make it the best that it can be, and I'm trying to do my absolute best. And my time here is up, and I don't know what that means for the next phase, but I'm excited to find out whatever that may be. But I'm out. I'm mic dropping this shit.
But not yet. It's just at the end of
Oh, not
this
yet.
year.
Not yet. I'll
Yeah.
make it as long as I can. Honestly, if I could live to 200 for this last go around, I would totally do it. I would do it. I'm going to try to milk it for all it's worth, but I'm going to try to take the lessons that I've learned now and in all of my past experiences and try to take that with me wherever I go and try to learn new shit on the other side, wherever that is. Planet, I don't know. Dimension, I don't know. But we're connected. We're tied together, so wherever we end up, I do think that we will encounter each other again somewhere in
Of
this universe.
course. Of course. Just come up to you on
Awesome.
the
Well,
astral plane,
do
tap
it.
on your
Do it.
shoulder.
I'll know it's you from a mile away too.
Hmm.
That is a fact. Whatever form you're in, I will know it's you. I'll feel you coming. So we are going to raid a channel right now. So you know what? I know we've been raiding her a lot lately, but Fetch Bug is on, and I think we should just raid Fetch every time that we can. For those of you that might be listening that don't know Fetchbug, she is a fantastic other streamer who talks about true crime, death, dying, the macabre, all of that kind of stuff. She is a mortician in training right now, and she talks about lots of cool, spooky stuff, and she's just awesome. And we support each other all the time. So, Roxy is our raid captain. She always gets the raid set up for us. And for any of you guys that are listening, you should definitely check out Fetch and give her a follow because she's so awesome. She's the cutest person too. You would love her. She's fantastic. So
Awesome.
let's get that set up
Let's
and then
get her.
we'll blast off.
So
But yeah, this
exciting.
was it. This was really it was really insightful, and I love that we've both been a part of each other's uh, projects. Being a part of Domination University with you has been absolutely fantastic, and me being able to put this podcast together, like I definitely want to be able to combine and be able to put some of this content on there that you think is relevant to personal power. But just a reminder for everybody in chat right now, check out Domination University. And Francesca here is the dean and the founder of Domination University. She is, in fact, not a dominatrix, but there's one on hand if you have questions.
Awesome. Awesome.
That's so funny
Thank
that
you
people actually.
so much. I know they're
Of
so
course.
disappointed. I'm like, well, I'm type A, but
That's so
I
funny.
know.
That's
I
really,
know.
really funny.
It's so funny.
Yeah, and you've got big thank yous from Roxy and Natara on this right now. I think this is really very good, valuable insight into our own selves. So really, thank you so much for being willing to share all of these things with us. It's wonderful.
My
And
pleasure.
if you would be interested sometime in going into more detail and kind of sharing some of the specifics from your clairvoyant class, we can do another episode later where you kind of put your own class on if that's something that you'd like to do because I think it's
For
very, very
sure.
interesting.
I
Oh,
forgot
thanks,
to
Davia.
plug. I forgot to plug one thing. I'm such an idiot.
Oh, plug it.
Um,
Plug it. Oh,
Witch Mom Baby
uh,
Bat TikTok or not?
oh man, we just rated.
Oh,
Ah,
did they hear us?
we're